Hello, and welcome to Spotlight, the official podcast of Grapple. I'm Benno.
And I'm JP.
Just me and JP this week. Just been in the pre-show with Matty and Gareth, with Matty revealing his latest dealer's choice. Patreon.com/grapple if you want to hear all about that. Luckily, took it easy on us, JP. It's not a 12-hour epic, but we'll get into that in a bit when we get into the plugs. We were just chatting off air. How's things with you, mate? You've been watching a few films. How's things now that we live in the world of like the serene British paradise where what's been banned this week by the Tories? We've had vape pens are banned, aren't they? And XL bullying.
Vapes.
So you're all right now. You got it's got all of the other.
Try this out of my fucking cold dead hand.
You just reminded me of holding it. I was like, fucking hell, JP won't be happy. Is it because
I'm not bothered about disposable vapes?
Okay, all right. As long as
it's really on the newsagents, isn't it? It's like as much as anything. But then they were saying about it just litter and everything else. But right. Is there reasons? But
is it? It's probably the kids in it because it's like half the ones you see it is like blue raspberry black currant flavor, and it's in like a bright fucking yellow thing, and like I'm guessing it's the fucking hot thing with all the teenagers and stuff based on around mine because you do like literally like you smell them and see them everywhere. Like better than smoking, so hopefully they and plus you've got the XL bully in the back as well. You're hiding, JP, so you got to be careful. This fucking new Tory hellscape we live in.
Oh my god, yeah.
They're coming after the audience of Rise of the Foot Soldier, I think that's what it is. They're just coming after the real Brits, the ones who have an XL bully and smoke a vape and like to sit at home and watch films like you like to watch.
Well, I haven't seen Rise of the Foot Soldier. I know it's up to about 5 or 6, like on that. I did watch the Essex Boys documentary on Sky. Much like I watched Liverpool and Dublin Narcos, because I do like that kind of stuff as well. Liverpool's not as disappointing is I think that was the general consensus for that one. No, they love banning stuff. Like they'll ban e-scooters next. That's going. But in fairness, I don't ride e-scooters. Benji's a cross between a collie and a lab. And as long as they don't ban these types of vapes, if they do that, like I say, it's fucking war. Like, I'll be on the front lines, like kicking off about it because I can't live without it.
Oh, we'll take them out. I was just thinking that we should have talked on the pre-show. Like I was going to mention it there. Like did you see that top 50 TV shows of all time list that was like Metacritic and IMDb and all that put together? Like I wanted to get Matty's thoughts on it and what is I said on it. I think at the post show of the weekend show last week. I wanted to get like what is we know what your top 5 was. It included Bullseye, so I presume that list hasn't moved on at all. But like he shocked me because he'd only seen I think like 3 of the 50 or something like that. I was like, I've seen 28 of them, which I don't know if that's good or bad. In full, there was some odd ones in there because they had like things that maybe just slightly too high. Like what's it called? The one about what's the one with the HBO one last year? What's it called with the nuclear? What's it called? Chernobyl, yeah, that one. That's only one. There was a few in there where it's like that's one season. I don't think that's fair to kind of put it up against The Wire and The Sopranos and like the elite stuff of like the top 10. But then there was, I don't know. I suppose because it's made up of like it's not like it was personally put together. It's what are the top Metacritic ones? What are the top kind of Rotten Tomatoes ones? Those things are going to be flawed, and you're not going to get like like a Cheers isn't going to make it because there are not enough like current reviewers have seen it and stuff. But yeah, it kind of like skewed that way, or like things like Stranger Things, which I feel like was good for one series, and then like is anybody still watching that? I don't even think it's not even. I found out the other day it's not even finished. You know what I mean? That's on the list. That's where it gets a bit skewed. So like I always want to do like maybe that could be my dealer's choice. We'll work our way through the 50 and get Matty to fill in his blanks.
I mean, that would be like there'll be a lot of stuff in there. There'd be like, but there'd be. I mean, I will agree that Chernobyl is fucking incredible, but then it's a limited like 5-episode thing, which is always quite handy, rather than so many of the TV shows sort of become really unwieldy, and that's what Stranger Things has become. Like it moves away from the first couple of seasons where they kind of have a plan and becomes massively overblown. Like I just found out there's a Walking Dead spin-off that involves Daryl in France. How did he get to France during I'm so many questions about it. I'm curious to see an episode of it. But they've got another spin-off with Negan and another one of the characters. It's just like, it's basically just soap opera. And they're just getting their own like kind of spin-off stuffs. And there's a few zombies around on the way, and more people will die. And I'm sure they'll find some horrible bastards at some stage. But yeah,
look at the list here. Like Chernobyl made it like to top 3. Sherlock, which I feel like anything. I said to Matty, anything British shouldn't count in general. Peaky Blinders managed to make it in there. Fleabag, like I mean, it was good, but come on. Like, a bit strong, to have it in your top 20 TV shows.
Particular audience loves it.
Yeah, I suppose there's that as well. But it's like, I'm just glad it didn't have like stuff like I saw somebody say this week, like Prison Break. Like that screams being a Matty show to me, because it's like, it's like the Bloodline story now. Like I think it was Trevor Dane, maybe you said that on Twitter this week, we're at the point in the Bloodline story where they've broken out of prison, but they're breaking back in prison now. That's the hook for season 12 of the Bloodline or whatever on. So I could see that like making it higher in some lists as well. But I don't know. I feel like there's some justice for shows like Rectify. That's a personal favourite. I feel like that should have done some better. Can't argue with the
Justified out these days as well. Yeah, okay. It is. It's absolutely insane. Like the amount of like kind of stuff that's out there. I'm trying to find where this list is on it. Is it under like is it on a particular? Is it a particular?
It was on the Discord. We had it on the Discord, but it's on like AS.com there. I'll put it in the chat there. But it's like Succession's done well. Succession's like number 18, kind of top 20 of all time.
How much is HBO?
A good chunk of like the top 3. Because like, is Band of Brothers HBO? Because I know
that's HBO. That's like kind of one of the earlier big hits, but again, like limited series. I know they're filming something kind of similar to that on there. Like,
Don said he had only British programs in there. Should be Fawlty Towers and Yes Minister, the Prime Minister. I could go with that.
Like, Succession ended at the right time. This is always the big thing with TV. You can tell it's a slow news week, guys. So we're going old school spotlight.
I'm just keeping the pre-show going.
We're just carrying that on. Like, unless you desperately want to hear me talk about an All Japan main event from 2 weeks ago, because spoiler alert, fuck all actual wrestling happened this week. There's a lot of like kind of news and notesy type stuff, but yeah, back onto the telly programs. There's so much like I just find lets me down. Like it overruns, it goes into too much, and they don't really know. Like even some of like the Marvel series, I just watched like kind of Secret Invasion and stuff, and even the Mandalorian. Like there are like obviously a big Star Wars fan, like the stuff that I enjoy, like Ahsoka, I'm enjoying at the minute, but it's always about how do they stick the landing and where do they leave you for the inevitable second. I think Andor, like you would love of the Star Wars stuff that's kind of like out there currently, but a lot of it I'm imagining is classic TV. So even like a 6 Feet Under will be on there, Sex and the City will be on there, Sopranos, The White, like the usual HBO staples.
Yeah, pretty much. Like I kind of threw my own list together, which is like I'd always have like I'd throw like I don't know. I think Seinfeld's a top 5 TV show of all time. I think that should be in there. There's a lot of this is the problem when you try and rank a list like this. I think a lot of the best stuff it's like Simpsons. When we talk about Simpsons, we have like an agreement as a society that we're not really talking about like any season after season 12 and possibly earlier. Like for some people, like we got like and it's like Seinfeld, same thing. We don't talk about the last 2 series of Seinfeld. We just pretend that didn't happen. Game of Thrones is one. You talk HBO, like that's one that like that did pretty well on the list. But I'm like, it was great. I had it in my, to be fair. Yeah, well, I had it quite high in my list because of how fucking strong the first like 3 seasons are. So you've kind of got to give it credit for that. But then that's the problem with TV. It's not a film, is it? It's gonna fall off. I was saying to you in the pre-show, I've been watching Top Boy, and like this latest series just didn't really have much going on for it. Like there's like that doesn't happen with a film, does it? So it's like, do you knock points off for it? Like even The Wire. The Wire's not perfect. Season 5's kind of weak, isn't it? For like for what it is,
Yeah, I would go. I mean, looking at it now, I mean, I'm surprised that's not kind of higher. I mean, it's things like I'm really shocked something like Happy Valley will end up being moved up these lists quite dramatically because it's like it's better than Mayor of Easttown, which is kind of the like similar plot and stuff. It's interesting because it is mainly a lot of it's drama as opposed to comedy on there as well. So like. If you're wanting like Fleabag, I think is the top ranked comedy, isn't it? Necessarily. And I'd also have like, because he's got Breaking Bad at number 1. I prefer Better Call Saul, but maybe that's just me. The stuff about Better.
I've got a higher. Connor saying there,
yeah. Like, and so I need to join in on this chat on the Discord, because obviously I need to update it as well with whatever the film of the week. I'm very tempted to put in one of the worst films that I've seen in recent years. I saw this week. If I paid money for it, I'd have been livid. It's called Strays, and it's just like it involves talking dogs, and it's just like written by like I always bang on about a thing that Charlie Brooker did called TV Go Home, where it was like fake Radio Times listings. And one of the films they had on there was something called Tough as Fuck, about Detective John Fuck. And it says it was written by two 14-year-old boys. And this might well have been, because it was an hour and a half of dick jokes done to the voices of Jamie Foxx and Will Ferrell. Like, it's just awful, 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 awful.
So I'm gonna bring Liam in the chat here saying a friend of his once started in the pub that Come Dine With Me is the best British TV show of the last 20 years. There's famous scenes in it, there's quotables in there. It could have made the top 5 in this list. Breaking Bad's 1, Game of Thrones is 2. I forgot it was that high. Chernobyl's 3, Sopranos 4, Band of Brothers 5, Wire 6, Better Call Saul 7, and then it's Stranger Things, Sherlock, and Peaky Blinders round off the top 10. Feels I don't know. But the Brits have done too well there.
They have. But then I think there's stuff like that will go along with. I mean, The Office is a mixed one. Are they talking about the British and the US? I'm kind of assuming they're talking about the US.
It's got to be the US. The US is up there for me. Like, and that's another one. You've got to pretend the last couple of series don't exist, where you break down the fourth wall, pretend the camera's not. You go from pretending the camera's not there to the cameramen are characters. It's very Russo. It kind of fits the wrestling analogy there. I'd have that way higher than I'd have the British one, but Steph would have me neck for that. She's not in agreement with that.
And can I say, I feel I know Davey loves Lost, but I have strong issues with it, and it's just it being in there. That's
another one. Has anyone really finished it? Does anyone read? Oh, so yeah, you have then. I have. I've never gotten there.
Mate, I was there at the bitter end. I loved Lost, and when I watched the finale and I stayed up live for it, I was like, nah, I'm not happy about this. This is just like, and I daren't go into spoiler alert because it will like ruin the whole thing, because there's too many of these series. There's one called From that started, and it just throws up more questions and answers. And after a while, I'm like, can we just crack on, please? Just have some shit happen, so I can follow it in a traditional narrative sense, like just sat in on a Wednesday evening or something along those lines. But it feels like I'm hoping like Severance season 2 would be something I'd be incredibly excited about. I think that's, but even then,
that'd make my list. That was barely outside my 50 pairs.
I've never seen a better season finale in years as something as just as a tightly constructed, plotted, edited together. Like just the tension building throughout that episode, and it being brilliant, but also leaving enough there. But the season 2, because of the strike. So if nothing else, we're not going to get a lot of new telly in the near future.
Now's the time to catch up, isn't it? I think it's the wrestling in general, like just having so much to watch for the podcast and stuff. And obviously we're blessed with having the Patreon. It's a good thing. But when Matty gives us homework like he does this week, he just find himself slipping behind on stuff. Like I used, like say, I easily put together the top 50 TV shows of all time that I feel was pretty solid. But it's all stuff from at least 3 years ago now. Like I'm losing track with what's going on. Maybe that's something that happens as you get older. Less 24 episode series as Andy said. Yeah. That would and what the Netflix generation, I've just kind of fell behind on that as well, especially since you started being weird about you logging in on other people's accounts and stuff. So maybe I need to use this time to catch up. A time when there's not much going on in the wrestling world. Hence this chat here. But on the subject of moving narratives on and not letting things go too long, we should say obviously we're going to get into the week in wrestling in a second. There isn't much to talk about this week, although we do have a couple of big headlines with the WWE UFC Merger today. A bit of a AEW to catch up on, a bit of a Impact Victory Road. But just to let people know, on the Patreon side, as talked about, we have got week 2 of Dealer's Choice Month, which had Matty picking just now in our pre-show his choice of, we don't know if it's a flashback, we don't know if it's deep cut, but we know we're talking about the WWF Deadly Game tournament from
Story.
1998. The story of, sorry, I shouldn't butcher that too much, as Matty has made clear, it's going to be the story of, and I've got fond memories of that, as we talked about in the pre-show. I remember distinctly being a big rock guy and kind of thinking this was going to be his big babyface moment, and it got turned on his head. I remember it's like the CM Punk story now. CM Punk is, in a lot of ways, in my brain, replaced Shawn Michaels in my like wrestling fandom, because I spent most of the late 90s, every time there was a mystery man, thinking it's going to be Shawn Michaels, and then it wasn't. I'll just be doing that for CM Punk for the next couple of years. But yeah, I'm excited to get to that, JP. I think he's made a good choice, and it'll be a tough act to follow as well, considering your one we did last weekend as well, which was FWA versus ROH Frontier Savannah. We're spraying to all fields here, and all kinds
really
of,
are.
Oral phrase from our friends at the flagship.
It feels like a kind of like, and you're a real wild card for this as well, because I know you've got your thinking cap.
Well, you've picked ROH now, so it's like you kind of put me. I've been backed into a corner here. I can't just be like, Manhattan Mayhem 2 or Manhattan Mayhem 1, or I don't know, nowhere to run the pay-per-view and we'll watch the entire the full show and watch the entire thing. I don't know. I actually don't know. I might have to go no ROH now that you've chosen, as you put on the tweet and on the Patreon, not Benno's ROH as your choice. That is an important distinction. That FWA ROH show did take place before I downloaded my first ROH torrent off Extreme Wrestling torrent. So even I wasn't kidding. I was only I was going to say it. Even I wasn't going to that one.
Or even before they sent you the jumbo pack of DVDs for it. No,
it was around then. Yeah,
it's proper early. I mean, this is a show I was at, and I mean, according to Davey, like I'd ruined his evening by stealing the videotape that was used in a hardcore match from Davey as a small child as well. And in Leeds, he managed to hit me when I jump scared him, and he was pissed and falling asleep. So like, yeah,
I know Davey was going to shows and stuff, but I just don't like. I can't picture like young Davey at that show. He should have been doing BWE with us all these years back. He could have started earlier. Good to see those lads back, by the way. Poison Rana was back on YouTube to watch it.
Yes.
Had, very nice things to say about us and the London trip, which was very nice to hear. Great,
amazing blokes.
Great lads, but yeah, you could have met him in 2003, mate, in your hall, which by the way looked exactly the same. Not even had a lick of paint, I think, since 2003. Like, and that was part of that. To be fair, that was part of the argument, not argument, but back and forth we had. Like Matty and Gareth didn't agree on a particular match. Matty might be a closet. And it's unfortunate in 2023, but Alex Shane fan. Back then he was anyway.
He's a Russo fan.
Yeah,
he's describing Deadly Game as Russo's masterpiece. It's Alex Shane's.
Gareth was less impressed. I was very impressed with the production. You didn't seem as impressed as me, but like I was just shocked for 2003 that, like, bearing in mind, like the later that year was when I started like properly watching IW Mid-South and ROH and stuff. Like, for that stuff looked like it was filmed on some of these fucking, VHS. Like it was like a handheld fucking camera that my dad used to have in the early 90s and he'd carry around. Like the lighting would be dark and stuff. Like your hall looked brightly lit. Apparently it's a video rip as well. So I don't know, like that. The fact that looks so good on YouTube, it's there for all to watch. Like I was mostly impressed by that, really. Like it put to be honest, like even the audio levels and stuff put a lot of modern Brit rest to shame, if we're all honest with ourselves. It is.
It's a weird one for it because the set design is done by a primary school. Like it really is, with some like cardboard ring ROH and FWA lettering on there. But it's like overall, it's like a fascinating period of time because it's like the revival show had not long been before that. FWA was like the only game in town in Britain. And Ring of Honor coming over as like, this is the nascent RF video version of Ring of Honor, but Samoa Joe is champion. Like it's historically kind of important. And then we'll talk about like the kind of the Jody Johnny stuff as well. And yeah, there's, like say, a very divisive views on the commentary and everything else. It was like we all came from it from different kind of angles. Obviously, I was there live as well, so I was just fascinated because it wasn't a show that I'd gone back to watch. And I thought, well,
or a promotion you went back and watched. No, FWA or ROH, like young JP could have been. Your life would have been so different.
Oh, it would have been. But what did I buy from there? TNA videotapes. Like, I think that tells you everything. Like, I came up from that bloke who could have had the whole thing closed down because he had knock off Ring of Honor footage selling at a fucking Ring of Honor show.
At a Ring of Honor show.
Incredible.
Yeah. Shout out to Strong Style tapes. Pick tapes were credited as well, which I liked in the screen grab I got.
If you have stories of FWA, jump onto the Discord and go into the chat and tell us about them as well. Because I know loads of people do. So I'm always kind of like fascinated to hear about that period of time. Yeah, that hardcore match is something that it certainly lived in the memory for me. But yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. It's very interesting because, like I say, I was never an FWA guy, and I feel like I should have been. Like, it was perfect. It was in a way RROH, but obviously a lower standard. I think anybody would probably say that. But it's like, even watching the video, like on YouTube, you can see like, you know, like ghosts of Brit Res past and present kind of there. There's all kinds of like notable kind of people that you spot either in the audience or knocking around and stuff. But like, it just didn't happen for you. Like I say on this podcast, I had tickets to British Uprising that year and the year after as well, that I didn't end up making either of those shows. And yeah, it was all about America for me and ROH. Could have started BWA with Martin Bushby a lot earlier if things had been different. But yeah, like I say, a lot of people's FWA memories, like Chris says here in the chat, talking about TalkSport. Hear him out say that on TalkSport with Tommy Boyd and stuff. I remember it kind of getting written up in Power Slam. On the podcast, did he tell a story about how when they did have that King of England tournament revival on Bravo as like a one-off. Like, I was one of the people who Finn Martin whipped up into writing a physical letter, in the words of Matty, to the heads up at Bravo. Got a very polite letter back, like patting on me, going, "Thanks for your letter. There's no chance for showing any more British."
You tried, mate.
Cheers for your interest. It wasn't the only letter I wrote. I wrote a couple in my youth to different channels, trying to get the wrestling on. You know, guerrilla market and stuff. You know, just trying to get there from the grassroots to get it all shown. But it worked out in the end. We got better stuff on Bravo. What did we have? We had ECW and I remember we were talking about this on Twitter. ECW popped up, I think, like late 90s, because I remember there being like a half-hour version of ECW TV that I'd have like a lot of Raven and Stevie Richards and BWO stuff, and obviously Tommy Dreamer and Raven stuff mixed in. And then at some point we got the full ECW and TNN show. And then at some point, like I think it was the very end of WCW, we got the WCW run, like right to the end, pretty much. The Booker T, Scott Steiner, Team Canada kind of Johnny Ace booked era WCW we got on there. Even at one point we got some TNA as well. So rich history of British wrestling and Bravo. Maybe that could be a show we do. We said that Davey was a King of England as well. Maybe we'll do that at some point and we'll work through all the classic wrestling. Bravo was the perfect fucking channel for it. You would have thought it would. It might have sticked, you know, in between like the last city that leaves in the chat between Tactical Confessions and Sin Cities on Bravo, as Andy says here. Euro Trash esque madness. Like Simon says, the home of TNA.
I think they had around the world in 80 raves as well. That I can remember. Somebody I lived with liked watching that. It was a wild channel, Bravo. For that, it really was. It was like the precursor to like Men and Motors, wasn't it? That ended up coming
pretty much, lads. The channel, wasn't it? Who's up the broad?
Loaded magazine. I'm sure there's a documentary on bloody Carlos the Jackal as well. Out there with Emily Boo.
Some of this stuff wouldn't hold up. I don't think.
Bits, late night, fucking like TV programs reviewing video games, like just mental shit.
Maybe that could be my choice for King of the Mountain. I'll just pick like a 3-hour block there'll be one on YouTube, like a 3-hour block of Bravo TV from a random Friday night. Might get a bit of like a half-hour ECW taping. We might get a bit of boozed up Brits Bros. We might get a bit of Sin Cities in there. Could be a good night of watching. Maybe that'll be it. Maybe that'll be my choice.
I think so. I think you definitely do that. I mean, like, all I would say is that the image, the FWA poster kind of sums up very much like that period.
I was trying to put our logo on it. I couldn't find a blank bit of the poster to put a Grapple logo there. Like, there's just that much fucking going on.
Overstuffed with an FHM style photo, like in the middle of it. It really was. It was proper, like, kind of lads mag stuff.
Definitely. It all fits together. But yeah, if you want to hear our thoughts on that, obviously,
Yes.
like I say, patreon.com/grapple. I've got the right ticker going across the bottom before I was advertising the weekend show. And YouTube memberships, which we don't have yet. Professional podcast, as always. If anybody's watching this on the replay, which will be recording here live with our patrons on Tuesday night, but if you're watching on the Wednesday replay, hello. Please make yourself known in the chat. Chat's been busy on those Wednesday replays. We've been releasing the full spotlight show for audio listeners who only get it via Spotify or your podcast player or whatever. You can now watch the video replay for free outside of the Patreon, usually around 3 o'clock the day after air as well. So if you're listening to this early on Wednesday morning, you could wait until this afternoon and watch the video version there. But yeah, patreon.com/grapple is the place to go if you want to support the podcast. We do massively appreciate it. If you can't support us monetarily, a YouTube subscription, a like, a comment, anything like that really helps with supporting the podcast and keeping us going. And yeah, doing such shows as the FWA versus ROH1 and Matty's terrifying deadly game. Connor's going to provide us with the list on, so we'll see how much homework there'll be, but we'll obviously release the playlist for that on the Discord as well. It does the Lord's work, Connor. So thank you to him. We get mad at Matty, not Connor. But yeah, very much looking forward to that. Is that everything we got going on the Discord, JP?
I think that's it. I would say weekend show. We always have going. I'm very proud of that. Wednesday night news dump as well, which will come out late tomorrow. I'll go through all the various ratings and stuff, or perhaps the news that we don't cover today, because like I said earlier on, there's not much in the way of shows to review. But yeah, if you want hear more stuff from us at patreon.com/grapple.
There you go. Get it all over there. But yeah, on that note, we should get into to what's going on this week. And part of the reason we held off on doing a show to Tuesday this week was that we knew there was going to be some news breaking today. And it's end of an era, JP. The devil is no longer in charge. The evil entity has been removed from the wrestling organization, but we're going to get to CM Punk leaving AEW in a minute. Let's talk about Vince McMahon losing power of WWE first. Losing power. I mean, he's moved. He's fucking fell upwards. Is what has basically happened today. And if you weren't following Ariel Helwani or one of the many media members on Twitter who are all sharing the same photos, some of which are absolutely fucking hilarious from the day, that mustache will never look right on Vince McMahon. We'll get into that.
Behind me for the video viewers.
Oh yeah, JP's sat between. Who's in that picture? Triple H is in there. Bianca Belair is in there. Can't make out who else there is.
Montez Ford, Daniel Cormier.
Oh, it's Ari Emanuel, isn't it?
Ari Emanuel.
Not Ari Gold. Yeah, Daniel Cormier, like you're saying. Who's the other bloke? He's from the Endeavor side, isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a murderer's row of dodgy looking billionaires who have fell upwards. I'll have to hunt down the picture of Triple H and Vince from today, which is just, again, hilarious. The fact that Triple H is even there, like I saw the footage of them at obviously as they made the deal today at the New York Stock Exchange, which was interesting. They left it a day. I think unveiling this on 9/11 might not have been the best choice, so they waited a day and did it today on 9/12 instead. TKO. Which is the name they've come up with, is now trading on the New York Stock Exchange, which is the combined entity of WWE and UFC. Don't call it a sale, JP. Call it a merger. That's pretty much what it is. But they brought all the stars out. I found it absolutely hilarious. Like they did like the token thing you see where everyone stood on the at the top at the stock exchange doing like the clapping, and they're all Vince is putting his fucking hand to his ear, Hogan style, trying to get the crowd going. Dana White continues to look like a stuffed puppet at this point in his career. And somehow Triple H had moved his way to the front as well, who, like, by my reckoning, we can go through like the changes here, because like I think on screen there's probably not going to be much change at the minute. Like Triple H at this point has about the same amount of power as the cleaning staff at TKO. Like he's not on the board of directors. He's allegedly the head of creative, but he sits below Nick Khan, who again was front and center in a lot of the imagery that we got today. But yeah, he's working as Triple H. It's like those mark pictures. Make sure he gets front and center of every big shot that everyone's looking at.
Yeah, Kevin Dunn was on there as well. which is
in the background,
it's kind of wild for a man who seems absolutely averse to any photos ever being taken of him. But it was all very kind of what you'd expect from an event like this, isn't it? And we had an end to kind of, Triple H is there. He's as you say, he's in the photo. He's in the right there on the front.
What a murder's really got it on video.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Dana White. There's Nick Khan, all looking at the TKO belt in the middle of it all. I mean, it was all very glad handing because they, let's face it, in terms of the world of sport, you've got two entities.
Oh, they killed that mate instead.
Oh, well, that's it. Yeah. It's a really funny situation because mixed martial arts effectively feels like UFC, depending on, it's very weird for me to go into MMA chat on here, depending on what the Saudi backed version of PFL manages to do. But between that and WWE, they are kind of like the definition of like that particular industry. So the UFC is MMA leader by such a long way, and WWE is from that kind of financial perspective. And it just creates this absolute behemoth between them. But you mentioned like the real, there's a lot of applause, and I'm not sure how it's necessarily trading. This is not my forte in the slightest. But as we spoke about on the weekend show, the key is what then happens kind of behind the scenes. Because the first thing they'll end up doing is trying to make themselves seem more attractive. And the best way of doing that is by cutting costs. How's the easiest way of cutting costs? As you mentioned again on the weekend show, it's like merging things like HR departments. It's pooling those kind of resources. What works as well? Are we going to see sort of explicit crossover between the two as much as anything else? It's, I wouldn't expect the workers' pay to go up as a result of this, but this is the end of, from a historical perspective, 70 years of McMahon controlled wrestling. Like it is. I know he is ineffectively in control. Like for him falling upwards is the best way of putting it. Because obviously he still holds like a massive amount of power. There he's the executive chairman of the board, and obviously he's kind of like, is he like on parity with Dana White, basically just below Ari Emanuel there, who just wants them to kind of run a very steady ship. But the big things it kind of gets into is what's going to happen for the TV rights deals, what happens in terms of the negotiation strategy, because do they tie the two companies together? Like, in that way.
A lot of talk about that today.
Yeah, there is so much that this throws up, particularly like I know it's one of the stories that Dave Meltzer reported on.
Oh, he's going to be a pig in shit, mate. He's going to go back to the Observer Radio days. If you didn't like us talking about films for 20 minutes, you're now going to get a UFC chat for the first 25 minutes of every Observer Radio going forward again. It's going to be like the heady days of 2010, mate. We're back.
Yep. It is, and they're saying that Fox isn't going to go, like apparently for the 300 million that they want out of SmackDown and the TV rights negotiations, and it's Disney or Amazon. Now, obviously, UFC has a massive deal with Disney through the ESPN one on there. It is like a really fascinating time. I don't think it affects the product. They just will, I imagine, carry on producing the same generally more competent levels of TV that they have done for the past
content
while.
Farm.
But it's
content farm continues. As
content, the content farm continues. I think the thing that's interesting is, do they want to lose network TV? Because there is real power in having, I think, SmackDown on a network and not behind a kind of a paywall. And that's, I think, like for the general exposure for them, is that not something that they'd be kind of interested in? But you know what? They just look at the fucking money, and that's what it is. And that's what this is going to end up being as a company, as an entity. And you can see the kind of crossover stuff that they'll be thinking. We're not going to find Roman Reigns suddenly challenging fucking John Jones for the UFC heavyweight title or anything. But you'll definitely see him front row. Like, there will be like the kind of the shared star stuff there. There's a whole, like, it's just a license to print money with a group of bastards in charge, as it always kind of has been.
But it's like, even when you look at the branding today, and first off, that logo and that name, like I actually think TKO is a good name. Like I do.
I do.
if Vince McMahon had ever used that phrase on his TV outside of when it was Mark Mero's finish. Like, that should be a thing in wrestling, but it's not in Vince McMahon's WWF because it said the word knockout in it or whatever the reason might be. But it's kind of clever, isn't it? You're going to combine the two. Then, yeah, and TKO works as like 3 initials you can put on the stock exchange. Now, the logo, as the chat are saying, does look like it's been made in worked out. It does look like it looks like a WWE pay-per-view is what the TKO logo looks like. It's I don't know. I feel like they need to work a bit longer on that because even like I don't know if you saw today, like the banner of the background of the TKO website had like. And it's a mix of people. It's like a few WWE wrestlers in there. Even the video they put up, I thought that was notable. Who was in there? It was Becky Lynch. It was Bianca Belair. It was Logan Paul was in there. No Roman Reigns, John Cena, and Jey Uso, which was odd. But then, I don't know if you saw the banner that they originally put on the TKO website, instead of Bianca Belair, they had Impact's Women's Champion Trinity. Which had some people going like, hang on, are they doing some kind of like, is there some deal we don't know about where Impact's going to be like the third part of TKO? And it just turns out whoever put the banner together was either really stupid or possibly a little bit racist. And that was quickly changed. But yeah, I don't know about the branding of all this. I think that's the I suppose it doesn't really matter. It's like not a shell company, but it's like the company like above things. And like you said, the question's going to be, what does it realistically change? And I think one of the big things that changes is that Vince McMahon is no longer in charge to the point that yes, he's chairman of the board. Yes, he is at 13% or something like that. He has of the new company. But he's no longer in the position that, like, the reason the creepy mustache twat managed to work his way back into WWE was because he had all that voting power in the previous WWE regime. He could muscle his way back in. He could, force his own daughter out of the company. Like, he could do all of these things and find his way back in, because at the end of the day, Vince McMahon was WWE and WWE was Vince McMahon. Now it's he's won in some way because he muscled his way back in, and if you want to talk like succession, and then any kind of succession plan of his kids taking over, or this being like some family business that he couldn't wait to pass down through the family, like that was probably never Vince McMahon's goal. The goal at the point where he found himself under the cosh was to be like, well, how can I come out of this smelling like roses? I know a sale or a merger, as we ended up getting but that was allowed to happen because of the position he was in. He's not going to be in that position anymore. If another scandal happens, it's going to be, I'm not saying the people behind Endeavor are great people, or the people in those photos like behind you are, particularly going to be moral in these cases, but they are businessmen. And Vince McMahon will no longer have that power to kind of force his way to stick around. Like that could absolutely change things. And yes, they're probably not asked about the day-to-day running of the WWE. They're probably going to, if anything, encourage Vince to do what he did on Raw this weekend there and rip things up. But like that kind of bigger power is kind of gone. It is no longer, as a lot of people were saying yesterday, a McMahon family company anymore. This is much bigger than that, and it's going to make them much richer. But it comes with, a degree of, that bargaining that Vince McMahon is now almost, as much as he can be, a cog in the machine rather than the machine himself. As I just throw on the screen there, as Simon reacts bloody hell to the TKO banner. There she is in the corner, Trinity, WWE superstar. But yeah, it's a different world for Vince McMahon. I wonder whether the puppet face cunt realizes that.
This is the thing. I think this is the only way he kind of is removed without him actually passing away is through scandal. And it's not beyond the realms of possibility that there is more stuff that will eventually come out. That wouldn't shock anyone listening to this in the slightest. And so he doesn't have it's whether or not would it cause damage to what they'll see as TKO. You expect in this kind of cold, ruthless world, they give less of a shit and they just want problems to disappear as much as anything. But he doesn't have that kind of level of authority. In terms of the content of the company, I don't expect that to change in the slightest. I think this current incarnation of WWE is the thing that absolutely suits them down to the ground. They have their big shows in stadiums, which always end up looking great on TV.
They talked today about like possible synergies there, like to something you said before. There's the possibility of more Ronda Rouseys happening, where like MMA guys at the end of the career, maybe it's more of a straightforward transition. But they did also talk about the fact that maybe, and I didn't even think about this as a thing, while UFC and WWE will absolutely remain separate entities, like you're not going to get much crossover between the two. They're going to be very, very different things, and I think that will be, the Dana White influence and the UFC side influence, making sure of that. But like they did talk about doing big weekenders, and you could potentially have the same arena being used for, or the same stadium even being used for AEW, WWE on the Saturday and UFC on the Sunday, or the other way around. I suppose would be more likely. Like that's the type of thing that I suppose it does open things up for, even if we're not necessarily going to get like WWE angles taking place on UFC shows, although with the Brocks of the world, it's not necessarily impossible.
I think the one that seems more likely, we mentioned on the weekend, is someone like Gable Steveson, not working in WWE in the slightest, on a big contract.
Ship him off to UFC,
Ship him off to UFC, where he is infinitely better suited, and there would be some like kind of value and intrigue in him that you're just not going to get in WWE because he doesn't have it. He doesn't have that kind of appeal. Like he's a boots and trunks wrestler at the end of the day, and it feels
not a very charismatic one.
Yeah, and exactly. He doesn't have that kind of level of charisma, but he has credibility, which is what UFC is all about in terms of people who have that like kind of the legitimacy is what it has in there. There's just so many things you can like. You will expect to see promotion of WWE and people being interviewed and stuff like that. I'd expect to see a lot of them turning up at UFC events. And I wouldn't expect to see, if UFC run Jacksonville, Jim Ross, MJF and Tony Khan to be featured in any way, shape or form. That'll be ending very, very soon as well. But things like video games is where it gets kind of interesting about merging those. And you mentioned about the big weekenders. There are things that UFC can learn from WWE in a kind of live event capacity, I think, as well, and possibly some elements of promotion and monetization, like the way that individual like matches are sponsored in WWE. It wouldn't surprise me to see UFC doing similar type things as well. And it becomes
there'll be Burger King logos on Everett and Mace. They'll be on the ring post. They'll be in the ring. They'll be on people's faces. People will get tattoos. People will have T-shirts. Like Vince McMahon has resisted for years doing all that. But as soon as the Band-Aid is ripped, he's going to go fucking ham with it. There's going to be a lot of that. They're going to take those money opportunities, aren't they? Of course they are.
They are. And
they need to make a lot of money back.
They do. That's the big thing. And that's when we come into I can't see a world where there isn't staff laid off as a result of this, for them just being one company.
Oh, 100%. Nick Khan's almost said as much today. Like that's where the savings are going. That's where the savings are going to be, because you've got two lots of staff. Sorry for the lovely staff who were on the way to work in Stamford, Connecticut, when me and Steph went to visit. But I don't think you guys are much longer for this world. I think that's going to be. Why do you need 2 HR departments? Why do you need 2 market departments? Why do you need 2 departments booking venues? Like all of those things are going to happen, aren't they? Even if we don't necessarily see it on TV, because the way it is, we're not necessarily going to see wrestling releases, are we? We're not necessarily going to see any of that stuff. There's no indication, at least at the minute. It might affect contract negotiations. There's one of those we can talk about in a minute, but we're not necessarily going to see that, are we? That's where the savings are going to be. It's going to be behind the scenes.
It is, and that I can't see, and particularly because they've been on a hiring freeze from a wrestler perspective for such a long time. I just think there is possible ways of talent going between them that they feel like there might be some sort of value and use in as well. Like, I mean, if you're an amateur wrestler, you've kind of got you'd either do MMA or you do wrestling if you're carrying on in those fields. Now, if you want in theory, the really big paydays, because the problem in all of this, it's not like wrestler pay is going to be going up. They might have to pay more for kind of
go down based on UFC.
Big stars, but they'll go down. Like they don't like UFC is terrible for generally for a lot of the pay and
the wrestlers aren't getting a cut of this, even if the stock goes way up. It's not happening, lad. They haven't got shares.
They're the main game in town, though. And that's the kind of credibility that they have as well. It's just that they've become a behemoth of a company, and that's what WWE and they've already been part of that corporate system. I just don't think we as fans are going to see a whole lot of change necessarily. We're just going to see, these worlds effectively, like there's going to be just an endless stream of cross promotion, and it's the strength of the TV deals. But none of that money from the TV deals is going to work its way into talent unless it's a case of we're keeping the top premier talent, and they can bid for people if they want. But it doesn't mean, for example, that we go, oh, CM Punk, we'll get him in now straight away because we can, we'll look to get him in that case as well.
If you're reading my mind, JP, but it's just come up on the Observer Twitter. Nick Khan was asked about CM Punk. You know what he said? He said, "Listen, we only have respect for Phil. We appreciate his run here. We appreciate what he did and tried to do with the UFC. Not many people can actually get in there and do what he did. So when we have respect for Phil, we wish him nothing but the best." Didn't really say anything, but interesting that he said something. Is that a come over, mate? Is it getting come and get me from the Phil side? Maybe we're getting the Nick Khan's. That is a thing though. Punk's got good relations with UFC. Gets on with Dana White. He gets on with the power structure there. It's not
for
the
one
same,
of the promotions,
one of the sub brands, isn't it?
Yeah. It's on Fight Pass.
Whatever the equivalent to Strike Force is these days, it's that one.
And there's a question: do they merge Fight Pass and the network in some sort of like
technology-wise, maybe? Because I've seen a lot of people say the network needs upgrades like massively. I don't think they don't really care anymore because Peacock is where the money is. But like the network itself, you see nothing but complaints these days. Like they've literally, like New Japan World, which we're going to talk about in a bit, they've kind of left it to rot these last 5 years.
Yeah, they haven't. They really have done, and it's exactly the same. I mean, I think there's things from that they should be able to. I mean, because I subscribed to Fight Pass very, very briefly. There wasn't a lot on there that I was particularly interested in. I was looking for like historical stuff, and there really wasn't. And now it seems to be for like very small feeder brands to kind of UFC. So I think things even like Invicta turn up on there. Maybe I could like really small, and that's one of the promotions that CM Punk does commentary for, because that's the thing that he loves doing. But yeah, he does have a good relationship with him. It's such a Nick Khan non-answer, isn't it? He's not gonna. You needed to ask one of these two, one of Vince or Triple H, about whether or not
this picture I've got on screen right now. That Vince mustache doesn't get any less naughty. Like, did he have like botched surgery on his upper lip or something? Like, what is? why is this a look he's embracing?
Doesn't look like a human being anymore. Just looks like some sort of fucking monster at this stage in his life. But yeah,
well, he is. So yeah, that fits.
Yeah, that just doesn't look. As Ewan says in the chat, FTR in 40 years. That's kind of what they end up looking like. It will be on the show images as well. But yeah, this is like,
as well as
it makes them stronger.
Kawada looking miserable. That will make the show images, we promise.
I think ultimately it makes WWE stronger as a brand and as a chance of kind of expansion, and makes them more powerful in TV negotiations and stuff like that. Where they end up next is going to be one of the fascinating points, because if it's on through Disney or Amazon, it's going behind that kind of bigger paywall and the rest of it. And it's whether or not what happens like with the Peacock deal and stuff like that as well. Like, this is, in terms of them making money, they're going to be absolutely fine, because
the deal's up this time next year, isn't it? 2024, October 2024. Is that right? That's when it's going to be. That's not far away. That's not far away at all. Like, and chances of them staying with Fox seem low, I would say.
It does seem low, and it doesn't seem like it's just because they're being priced out effectively. I think, given, like for this, and I could see Amazon much in the same way that, like, I think because they recognize that the future of it is live events, and that's what WWE provide, and they provide it on a weekly basis, and they provide an audience as well. And you imagine Amazon getting on board with like WWE in the terms of revenue raises that they're going to be able to do through their way. Like, they'll be all over their front page and the rest of it when they're on there. And it's it makes them more powerful, which is kind of depressing, and also then raises the temperature, I think, to a slighter degree on AEW to kind of
that's why
feel
AEW
they've got their
exists. AEW
ducks in a
exists
row.
because TV networks were willing to throw big money on wrestling, and Tony Khan spotted that possibility and was like, if WWE getting offered all this money, what if a challenger brand got like a slice of that pie? And like that's literally the reason it exists. It's why, you know, it is what it is, and they get paid what they get paid, and they're gonna get a good deal when they come up as well. Like there is a argument to that, like the rising tide kind of rises all ships or whatever the phrase is. You know, there's something absolutely something to that.
We'll talk about it a bit with Impact and where they fit in later on when we get round to the Impact conversation.
Yeah, they could do some scraps off the table. They wish that was on purpose, that Trinity photo. I was just going to ask you quickly, like, is there do you think, I don't know, Triple H, is he safe? Like, not on the board of directors. He's clearly, you know, I'm sure he's made loads of money based on his shares and whatever from this. That's why him and Stephanie ended up, despite, and that book that gets written one day when we find out the succession maneuver and, but like, did you ever think, JP, like when you go through like the WWE history, you go through like, you know, Vince setting up Shane to be the heir to the throne. Shane, who, by the way, was on this early 2000s. Shane was trying to get his dad to buy UFC. Early 2000s, Shane was also trying to get his dad to start NXT UK. So, you know, maybe it's not all win for Shane O'Mac, but like he drops out the picture obviously years ago.
Yep.
Stephanie, you go back 4 years ago. Can you imagine that photo behind you, or the one at Wall Street taking place without Stephanie McMahon in the picture?
Yeah.
Like there's a story to be told there as to whether Triple H and Steph were trying to get Vince out the company legitimately. You know, you hear things about Steph and Triple H's relationship that I'm definitely not going to be the one reporting here today, but you know, who knows what's kind of going on there. Like, it's unbelievable that we're in a situation where this has happened, and Triple H, the main event wrestler from the 90s and early 2000s, is the one stood in the pictures with Vince, and none of his actual blood relatives are there. But was Triple H long for the world? You know, when you hear the story about, you know, Vince ripping up the script again on Raw this week and wanting to get more and more involved with creative, like, you know, Triple H has lost a lot of power with this deal despite the money he's made.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's about him coexisting with Vince from the creative perspective, because I think the easy way to kind of, and you can't help but feel that there is some kind of tension in there. It's not beyond the realms that he gets removed. There has to be, just for the family dynamics and everything else. How wouldn't that like be the case? And maybe like Tom Wamsgans, he can just take a lot of pain, basically. And
he's
I
still
imagine
there.
And he is doing it. And I'm sure there's a part of him that feels, how long's
Vince?
Vince?
Is Vince thinking? Is Vince thinking? You know, he's an easy hand for the creative, and he's done a solid job the last couple of years. But you know, that's why Vince is getting back involved. He doesn't want him to do too solid the job. But like the day things turn, you know, football season's starting again, and you know, Roman's off TV. So SmackDown this week was, you know, down based on like that peak it was doing. Like Tom in Succession, Triple H can be first out the door. We're gonna refresh creative. Paul Heyman's gonna step into that role. You know, he can answer to Nick Khan instead of Triple H. You know, like that is that day coming. I could absolutely see it. Like Vince is always gonna win, and it's a horrible fact because he's a horrible human. But like, it's not going to be Tom the last one standing in this series of Succession. I think in this series of Succession, Logan Roy just doesn't ever die. I think that's what we found out. Or Nick Khan, that's the other possibility.
I think it's like if something happened to Vince tomorrow, who become chairman of the board? Nick Khan. I think Nick Khan straight, like the first person that Ari Emanuel would go to. Nick Khan would then think, I just want a steady hand on this. I'm not going to go for any kind of cowboys or whatever. So I think in that scenario, the problem is that Triple H will never be in the Vince McMahon position here. He won't be like, I just don't ever see him becoming like chairman of the board. Nick Khan's won that battle ultimately, and he's incredibly well tried. It's basically, he has to go along with any of this stuff in order to kind of maintain his job. And as long as things are kind of steady, I think that's fine. I think it's, the problem always is with Vince is that if Vince is taking part in a creative perspective, there's the wild card that he'll do some stupid / offensive shit that will get them a ton of blowback. That's always a possibility with him, because that's the stuff he likes. It's fucking stupid and idiotic, and it was passé in the year 2003, let alone 2023. So I think that's the only way that he kind of could end up ballsing up, where Ari Emanuel would have to say, what the hell's happening to the product? but it's such a machine at the moment, and the TV just exists, as you said, as a content farm. And Triple H has his hands. I always think his hands are more over like the pay-per-views and stuff like that. That's the stuff that effectively they can do, because the money's already there from Peacock, isn't it? So effectively, he just will produce. He wants to produce like a longer wrestling show, but the TV aspect, Vince wants more and more. But his view of television and what should be on TV is sort of woefully out of the way. But it's very hard to see a world where Ari Emanuel he would have to go to shit in quite an extraordinary way. And as we've seen for the last couple of years, it's competent is where they are. And competent does good numbers in this day and age.
Yeah, they won't want to be rocking that boat too much, but yeah, that kind of covers the story. I think there were a couple of like minor WWE news notes. Matt Riddle is still employed somehow, despite the allegations he made against that police officer in the airport on the morning of 9/11. The fucking idiot. I don't know. He's claiming some kind
John
of
Terry did something similar to that, didn't he, back in the day?
Somehow he's still around. I don't know how much
Right.
you really want to talk about that story, but like on a not even more positive note, on a slightly different note as well, the fact that LA Knight it came out. We were talking about on the weekend show, as well as that Riddle story. I think we'll be the first to go in this new endeavor era. I feel like they're gonna realize that Matt
It causes grief.
It's not worth the trouble, is he? At this point, and I think with that UFC relationship, Dana White's probably going to be in Vince's ear and not go and get him. Just get him out, lads. Just get him out. He's not worth it, and that might be a Dana White decision that I actually agree with. But apparently, WWE and LA Knight are far apart on contract talks. We were talking on Friday that was going to be done. I hope he gets his money. Like the lad deserves it. You got a limited window as well with WWE. He's over right now. Money is flowing. It's either the best or worst time to make it a deal here if you're LA Knight. Maybe you should just take the money and run, because in 6 months Vince might have lost interest in you and you'll slide back down the card again. But I found that interesting that he's like he is on screen fucking taking shots at Kevin Nash this week. LA Knight, look at the verb, not the adjective. I'd be an idiot if I said adjective. I think he said about Kevin Nash, because Nash has been quite critical of him being a knock up a Rock and Austin. He's carrying that kind of confidence and swagger to the negotiation room. You might get more of this now that the wrestlers. I know we talked about UFC and WWE, and UFC's will to not pay the fighters much, but wrestlers might well stand up like LA Knight and go, hang on. LA Knight's probably on a shit NXT deal, isn't he? And he's probably like, no, lads, come on, listen to me, pops. Look at all that money you've got rolling, and I want a fucking proper contract. Might be the death of him, but I almost think good on him for trying.
I think good on him for trying, and you can argue that he's kind of earned it. Is he not on effectively a kind of? It'd be a very low end deal for him, and he realised when is he ever going to be in this position to kind of negotiate this again? Because it's also at the point where they haven't spent 6 months burying him, is when he's in the negotiations. At a point where to that live audience, and it's not for me, but they love him, and they do the chant, and he's selling merch. And he's a focused part of TV. But as with these things, we've seen them happen before. They can just kill pushes of people we think, like, if you want to think of, like, you mentioned him in the pre-show, like Matt Cardona, you want to think of Zack Ryder and stuff like that. They can squash this stuff in like an instant as well. It would be kind of an old school Vince decision to do something like that. But it says a lot about. It says a lot about them not paying. I mean, I think this could be a bigger story when we start to see other contracts coming up over the next couple of years. Are they willing to pay that money? Because as we've seen with UFC and someone like Francis Ngannou, they'll leave and they'll do other stuff. And now he's fighting Tyson Fury in Saudi Arabia, isn't he? So, like, you kind of look at this stage.
That attitude, isn't it? That is their attitude. It's like, well, fuck you then. Unless you're Conor McGregor, like, you can't really get them over a barrel, in fairness. Like,
no. Even John Jones would be one of the more storied fighters in their history, and obviously comes with a fuck ton of baggage of all the daft shit that he's done. But you look at them, like, I mean, it took a long time of like negotiations as well, and it's hard to see that anyone that WWE wouldn't be willing to do it for. And then you get the point of where AEW in this, and what are they going to be able to pay? I think it's absolutely. I think it's a fascinating time in terms of those contracts, but that's stuff that we're really looking at for 2024, aren't we?
Mm.
Around the same time as the TV deal, because the wrestlers know how much that they're making from this TV deal, and quite right, they say, "Well, this TV doesn't happen without us, so therefore we should be getting a bigger slice of it." But they're not going to unionize anytime soon, so any fanciful dream of that's going to be out the window. But yeah, this is I feel going to be going down like the LA Knight story is going to be an interesting one to follow, because I don't know, like if you're AEW or whatever and it becomes like available, do you go for him? I'd say probably, but it wouldn't make me want to watch Dynamite.
That's
I don't
like Bray
know.
Wyatt, though, isn't it? You know, obviously
Yeah,
rest in peace, but when he was available, it never happened, did it? Because he didn't really fit. But yeah, you want to play those sides against each other. You want to, you know, in an environment where these companies are going to be making money hand over fist, this is the time to play your card. It's risky, but it could pay off. But you mentioned AEW there. We should move on to things AEW. As like I said at the top, JP, WWE is not the only place where the devil has moved on, mate. As we are now in in a new era of AEW. Rejoice, mate, as viewership is way up across the board. No, it's not, unless you're particularly wanting to make everything a CM Punk versus the Elite conversation, as many will on Twitter. But we should talk about what does this company look like over the last week of TV. Collision was on obviously on Saturday, did 476,000 viewers, and it was up 38% from the previous week's series low. And before you do somersaults, that's still in the bottom 4 of Collision numbers. They were up against college football, I believe, was the thing there. 14th on cable with a 0.15 in the 1849. The cable charts were dominated by college football on the Saturday night. But you know, the headline there is surely, you know, the evil CM Punk is gone, and now AEW is back to the AEW we know and love. In all seriousness, I don't think you can really draw much from that Collision number, other than to say there's clearly an effect when they're up against WWE pay-per-views, as we saw last week. And there's clearly an effect when they're against football, but maybe not as bad an effect, it seems. But, you know, it's one of them where, you know, we'll see. The narratives will be peaking over the next few weeks, and you can kind of, you know, me being the Punk fan, I can spin it however I like. You know, if it goes down, I'll be like, see, without Punk, look what's happening. Like last week with the record low. People are going to be kind of making those arguments. But it's going to be a different show going forward, isn't it? That's kind of part of the overall discussion of this post-CM Punk AEW and what the TV looks like going forward.
Yeah, I think that's really the big takeaway here is that it is going to be a very different show. And as we spoke about on the weekend show, we're going to see a through line. When we were talking about Dynamite, you could see how Dynamite.
And I don't know if that's good.
We'll
get into it.
Do you know what? After this week, because obviously I was quite high on Dynamite, I watched Rampage, which was there pretty much. As it always.
I watched Rampage too this week, to be fair. Maybe they've got us now, JP. Watching all the content again. Maybe that's how they win.
I wanted to see if there was real continuity between them. But Rampage kind of felt like Rampage, and to a degree, Collision felt like how Collision felt, just with a shorter main event as much as anything. But it was like, I would say it's there at the moment. I don't know how I feel about it, because I don't like the tournament, because I'm sick of tournaments. I think this is the 5th one they've had this year.
And we should say for non-listeners of the weekend show, while we were moaning about the tournaments, we were moaning about like the fucking state of who are in it. We were very high on last week's Dynamite. I thought, you know, we raved on the weekend show about the Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland promo / program in general. Like that's all of our hopes and dreams coming to Swerve being moved up and MJF in a fucking grown-up adult program. Absolutely love that. And we also, you know, I think we, to varying levels, enjoyed the Joe and MJF stuff, and overall, you know, enjoyed it as a show. So we were quite high going into the weekend's wrestling with AEW.
And I was trying to think of what was the issue I had with it, and I think it was because it was another bloody tournament, and that really was the focus of everything. And we knew we were getting Joe and Roddy as the final, and that's what we got to. It just there was a load of other matches to kind of show that, and I think the problem was it was patently obvious because that's where the storylines are going, and you end up in a situation where, I suppose, for the element of drama, in theory, you can have Roderick Strong or Samoa Joe challenging at Arthur Ashe. I think they might go with Samoa Joe, but you could, in theory, have both of them challenging at Wrestle Dream. You can have things like this. It's a kind of strange situation because I didn't like. So there wasn't like I felt the sort of subset. I mean, I liked the Starks Danielson stuff, but I didn't like it as much as say Swerve Hangman. That felt like a lot more kind of. That was much more the type of thing I've been looking forward to seeing. But so at the same time,
did it feel like a different show to you? Did it feel like same old Collision, or did it feel like same old Dynamite? Or are you with me? I always feel like it was a bit of both.
I felt like it was a bit of both. And seeing someone like Jade Cargill return effectively in stasis, like is exactly the same way challenging for a title that she's already had, when there was a clear way of putting her into the women's program, which would be a lot more interesting, and like is in the world title program rather than the TBS one. So I think there was a bit of, it felt like there was a bit of both. Like there was similarities in the kind of vignettes, seeing the Dark Order on there doing like hawking their merch and stuff like that. It did feel like there was a lot more stuff they were kind of throwing together. I mean, it kept the sort of promo bit from the beginning, but like as I mentioned, the main event was like 15 minutes, where obviously before it'd been that half an hour. It hadn't been slower paced. There were a lot more people featured on this than what there had been on Collision.
That's the thing. Because me and Steph watched over the weekend. There's like I wish I could. I'll find the YouTube channel. I'm a big on it. This weekend. All I've done is watch Maven's YouTube channel, which I was raving about last week. Yeah. Stevie Richards' YouTube channel is fucking great. He broke down the Bret Hart Goldberg kick this week. Really, really good. Even if I don't even necessarily agree with the conclusion, because I still think Bret Hart taking a jackknife from Kevin Nash the week after and doing a hardcore match is probably worse than the Goldberg kick. Yeah, even that with a concussion. But anyway, love the channel. Watched a lot of that. There was a YouTube video I watched where it was like, and I'm sure everyone's sick of the cunt by now, but it was like CM Punk in AEW, and it went through all of the problems early on when he returned to Collision, and you kind of watch a lot of, like, it was funny watching a lot of the segments back where you can just tell he's not a happy man. Like, he's just not, even in his comeback segment, every promo he cut during his run, there was like a sly real life dig at, like, whether it be Hangman Page, whether it be MJF, whether it be the young lads in the back. There was always something. He was a very pissed off man during that run. We'll do that deep cut at some point. And yeah, there's a lot of clear warning signs for that last Punk run that maybe I watch with like rose tinted spectacles. But speaking of those rose tinted spectacles, the positive of the Punk Collision versus the non-Punk Collision we're getting now was at least there was a reason for Collision and to watch it. Like, this show this week to me felt like the same show, just with CM Punk taken out, and for the positive, to your point, more characters included, because that was the big negative. Like, that 6 to 8 week original Collision run, I loved it because it was a focused world that got Ricky Starks over, got Jay White over, Punk had his main stories, FTR had the main stories, and they were the positives. The negatives were, I can't really name other wrestlers past that were really prominent characters on the show, because outside of the Guns and the other ones that, you know, the periphery of that world, it was very lacking in talent because of the CM Punk issue, and that was the positive and the negative of it. And I think at least for those first 6 weeks, we took that positive and accepted those negatives, and it produced some of the best, most coherent AEW TV, I thought, in a couple of those weeks, even though there were absolutely some ropey weeks as well. The problem is now, I didn't think this was much different, really. It felt like, if anything, like, I don't know, like a lower stakes version of that same show. We had more characters, and that was good, and more star power, and that is absolutely going to be good going forward. More people mixed in, more people, you know, like a Britt Baker, even characters like that who, you know, we saw last week and this week, who wouldn't have been there when CM Punk was there, and that's the absolute positive. But it felt a bit like a B show. It felt a little bit. Did it feel urgent? Did it feel like if we hadn't have seen it, we could probably do the talking points still now and be fine? Like Dynamite still very much feels like the A show. And again, I can't say how much, you know, patreon.com/grapple for the weekend show review. Like, we raved about that Dynamite and loved it. I carried that momentum into this Collision, and it was a nice little show. And there's a match in here that I would, it's probably the one thing I'd actually pick apart. I actually don't think a lot of it really deserves granular breakdown, but the overall just felt like, okay, this was a notch below Dynamite, a lot of the same guys, which, I can see the positive for, and I think you'll make that case, but the negative as well, I can see a lot of these guys on Dynamite doing stuff that feels like it's got more stakes. I'm sorry, this world title tournament doesn't have stakes. You can pretend it does, but it fucking doesn't.
No.
And all in all, I was just like, well, is when CM Punk, the major star that you can only see on Saturdays, is no longer there, that's a massive negative now, because there's no reason to watch the Saturday show. You can see everyone on Wednesdays, despite the positives that I think you might make the argument for, JP, of the story flowing between the three shows.
This is the thing where I feel like already I've got doubts over what I'd said on the Friday, because I was like you. I was like, when you were saying it then, I was thinking to myself, it did feel like a lesser Dynamite. If we think of, like, we've gone from a show, like you say, that had been focused around like a relatively small group of people to one where suddenly that universe has now got a load of people chucked in and in promos. We've got the Righteous being introduced in there, and you've got all of them. And now the problem is that it's kind of very much promos and back, like Andrade watching a telly, not knowing whether or not he should smile or frown. Very, very confusing. I didn't know how he felt about watching. Who was it? Was it the Guns? Was it Bullet Club Gold? So you're like, is this something with Jay White? Is it something that is going to involve Roosh and the rest of them? And I think that's actually an issue. Is what it could have had is focusing on other people rather than sort of at the same time just repeating the same stuff, like you said you'd see on Dynamite, that wouldn't, you had the Acclaimed go out there on Dynamite and do a live promo in front of the crowd. Here we got a backstage one. We got another similar Roderick Strong kind of promo, and then he wrestled later on. And it's like, why not just have him wrestle as being the feature on this? And I think that's the thing. It's about making it feel important. Was there like important angles on there? And you go, well,
what's an important people? Because that's the other thing. Like, just to put in, like, yes, that's my point. And also, but I'm not. It's not like you kind of can't win in some ways, because like it's always going to feel like a lesser show, because no matter which way you slice it, it's either going to be wrestlers you see on Dynamite all the time. But when they did introduce new characters on this, it's a lot of people who just aren't over. Like, it's a lot of people who, like, pretty much every match had somebody in there that, like, I could just see, like, someone flip the channel going, do I really want to see Angelico in 2023?
That's
as
it.
Good as they are, do I care about Gravity Aerostar in the form of Drago? Of course I don't. Do I care about Robin Renegade? Do I care about Action Andretti? And I get it, you've got to do those things to get people over and put that work in. But that's, you kind of can't win, because even when you do that with those fresh people, JP, you kind of, you're starting from scratch too. I think it's always going to have that feel, I think, of just being lesser than, I think, in a lot of ways.
And that's the problem, is it can't feel like that. So
too much is at stake.
Too much is at stake. And if you want to know what's at stake, I mean, as far as I'm aware, the Warner Brothers Discovery expectations are basically 500,000 and a 0.20 in the demo. Didn't hit either of those this week. And it's going to be, it feels very random to see like what
that was a shit rating. People are going to stop talking that up like it was good. It wasn't good.
No, last week was an absolute fucking disaster.
Yeah.
And it was better than that. But if they'd done anything kind of close or worse to it, it would be awful. They have to stack this up. This has to feel meaningful, which means meaningful shit is going to have to happen. And if you're taking your time up, or certainly like a good half of the show is taken up with basically another fucking tournament, then there's going to be an issue. If it had, and I like the Starks Danielson angle.
That was very well. I'm glad they had follow up there, because one of the other things we praised about Dynamite on Wednesday was follow up. We had follow up for Swerve. We had follow up to Takeshita. We're going to get more of that on Dynamite when we talk about it in a minute. Follow up for Hangman. Follow up for Starks in a way, but we got more follow up for Starks here. Like, I was glad. Keep that fucking going. There's momentum there, and there's clearly more juice to this Danielson thing. Like, that was. There's two segments really I want to go into in detail, and that's one of them, because that was really, really well done again and kept things running for me.
Yeah, it did, and it needs to have. I mean, I'm imagining that it should be Full Gear by the time we kind of reach the resolution. At which point I'm expecting Ricky Starks to necessarily go over, because obviously it built towards Danielson and like the Zack Sabre Jr. match. But like I say, at least it has the continuation aspect. That's the really important thing. Who are the people below the main eventers that we're trying to kind of build up, and how are we going to build them up, and are we putting them in meaningful feuds? And you would say, yeah, I mean, the tag division, it feels like, you know, another set of open challenges, which do we not kind of have that
concurrent? Three.
We have that for the international champion. We've got it for like the TBS champion. Like you say, there's 3 titles of it. This is lazy storytelling, and it's the stuff that needs to be kind of eliminated or weaned out. Like, I don't want to see any other tournaments this year or fucking battle royals. Like, be done with them. Like, that is it for the rest of the year, because they need to start telling actual interesting stories. And there's a lot of it where we saw people like Keith Lee being introduced, and I was like, for what reason? Like, ultimately, like, are we going to be
You
doing
felt a bit out of date. You used the phrase colliders, and it was like that ship sailed, mate. That was a while ago now. Oh, yeah. Catch up, Keith. Also, grow your beard back. You look weird. That was odd. I say I loved. You know what? I don't want to be, you know, fully negative, and it's not even like I don't know if I necessarily have a solution. I think Rampage is always going to feel like a C show now. I think that I might be a bit cash with Collision as like a B show, and then there's the problem of half the people are watching it. Almost of a Dynamite a lot of weeks. Do you want to put your big stuff on it, and it becomes a chicken and the egg situation? But I think the die is starting to be cast on it. You know, I'm surprised it's happened this early, but I suppose Punk leaving has kind of put it in that position. But I think that's kind of the show it's feeling. But I did love that segment, and I did really, really love, and it was probably my match of the week, Roderick Strong and Darby Allin. For all the negatives I can say about this tournament, it's been a positive for Roddy. He's a main character in this, whatever we think about the whole MJX story, and he's getting over for character work for the first time ever in his career. But like, it's almost perfect because he gets to be the stupid character with the neck brace and the glasses all the way down to the ring. And as we said on Dynamite, take it off, and then he just has a Roderick Strong match. And then the match finishes and he pops it back on. And you're getting the best of both worlds there, because like in ring, he's still fucking Roderick Strong with one of the best engines in wrestling. Still one of the best, just pure workers. Like, he is a worker's worker, but in like a more of a modern sense. Went out there with Darby, and just like we said it in the preview, a match made in heaven, because Darby's got the bad back, and what's Roddy good at? Backbreakers. And you know, everyone's going to rave about the spot on the ring post, which was actually very safely done. Unlike a lot of spots that I think get done there. Like, I never used to like Generico's top rope brainbuster, because I always felt like no 2 wrestlers landed the same way on that, and that tells me you haven't got control. And I don't think he ever had full control on that move. This was perfectly placed, because Darby pretty much landed exactly on like the turnbuckle cover. And as much as it looked bad, I actually don't think it was that bad, but you could believe it, because Darby took all kinds of punishment in this match, and the backbreakers were awesome, and the finish was awesome, and it put Roddy over really strong while continuing on that story. I thought this was the absolute highlight of the show for me. It was just don't get me wrong, it's not a 5-star match, it's just a really top tier TV match. It's one of those 3.75 plus. I'd probably go 4 on it. I enjoyed it that much. TV matches that like you can get as like a diamond in the rough of, you know, the daft tournament that we've, you know, got a lot of negatives to say about.
I think that's the thing about it, is it didn't necessarily have, the tournament was part of it, but in its own weird way, you had the stuff with Luchasaurus and Christian Cage at the start, which is kind of building to a rematch for the TNT title. You had the stuff with Nick Wayne and AR Fox as well at the same time. And then you got Roderick Strong's whole kind of story there, which at least means that like you've got a reason to care about his matches. So I was like you, I came along and thought, this is just like a good piece of television. Actually, this is just like kind of classic wrestling television, where you've already set the seeds of Darby can lose, and that's fine because he's been attacked already on the outside, and Roddy's got the thing to kind of dive in on, but you've also got the reason to care about Roderick Strong. So it just felt like it ticked so many of those boxes that you wanted it to pick for that. So it's like good wrestling telly. I'm intrigued by Roderick Strong. What can I say? And I would say, like, I'd push back on the idea of the second most interesting character work as well. Like, he did do some good when he first came into NXT. There was some good stuff there. Like the Diamond Mine bit is probably just left forgotten about. It just felt like he was spinning his heels, like just there going through the motions. Whereas here, he's kind of completely bought all into it as well, and it works. And he's delivering on it so far. Is it going to like on that main event level? That's where I obviously remain to be kind of convinced. But at least with him and Joe, we've gotten to that point. There are arguments to go kind of either way, which I always think anytime you have those kind of debates, I always think that's a good thing. That's a good thing because it shows that it's worked. You've got two people who are over and have had a good last month in particular being featured in a really strong, positive way. And that's as much as you can do for it. So I was like, it's not my match of the week, but it's like I thought like really fun wrestling TV.
Well, while we're talking Joe Strong, like this is the lineup for Dynamite this week. You've got Joe versus Strong in the Grand Slam tournament final. Like you say, I'm with you. I think that could go. I think the most likely solution or outcome is Samoa Joe wins, and it's Joe versus MJF at Arthur Ashe. But I wouldn't rule out Roddy winning. There is also Wrestle Dream on the 1st of October where you could do something potentially there. Did see, by the way, as well as Kawada being in the US, and yeah, there's his tour of pizza houses and backstage at AEW didn't produce one smile from Kawada, unfortunately. But apparently, Kabashi's going to be in town in October, so I'm hoping that means he's going to be. Well, he said today he's going to be in America, so I'm guessing that means he's involved with Wrestle Dream. I don't think we're getting Joe Kabashi, but you know, you could do something. You could do something. Tony Khan's a big fan. You could do something that would tickle me. But yeah, Joe Strong in the Grand Slam tournament final anyway. So that could inform that show. John Moxley be Big Bill for the AEW International title. Talk a little bit about Moxley, and at least it's not another flyer. I don't know if he's going through the roster in alphabetical order. I've heard that theory. It does actually kind of stand up when you pick at the names he's worked so far in this international championship run. Britt versus Shida versus Nyla Rose versus Toni Storm in the grand tradition of the women's four-way. And Hangman Page versus Brian Cage, paying off the fucking awesome Hangman Page and Swerve angle. Oh, and also Don Callis unveils his next master.
Yes,
which is Takeshita's next target. Which I don't know if you've got any theories on that, but yeah, thoughts on that?
I sadly think it might be Kota Ibushi, which I won't be happy with at all on there. I mean, it's following up stories and like the Moxley Big Bill, and it kind of fits into the Bullet. The BCC thing, Bullet Club, I was going to say Blackpool Combat Club thing of being kind of heels and faces whenever you need them to be. In essence, they kind of go off and do their own thing and act like kind of shit heels. But if it's like last week's Dynamite, then I'm definitely intrigued by it as well. And looking at the ticket sales for Arthur Ashe, and this is another thing that they have to worry about, is their attendance is about 5,000 sold in a 20,000 seat building. They need to do anything to try and build the momentum up for that.
Apparently you can get 2-for-1 tickets there now, JP. You know, they've been
is it like that?
Put an email out via Ticketmaster. Yeah, because the prices are up, which is, whether you believe that affects sale, I think it's just a cold product. I think that's the truth. You know, all in masked a lot of things, and it masks the fact that they are pretty much a cold product in America right now when it comes to filling these arenas. And pricing probably has an effect. I've seen people complain about, especially because they got apparently they got a 1 million gate last year. So I think they were trying to redo that, and obviously the problem is the product's not as hot. So the only people want to pay the money that would give you a 1 million gate. So
but we've gone from 2 years of selling out Arthur Ashe to 5,000 paid just over a week out from the show. It does tell you where we are from this, and it also then makes me think, okay, you need to be going places where you are going to be getting a hot. Big crowds, and it makes you think, well, Europe, frankly, like we've seen that already, that there is a kind of level of demand for it, that might be an option at some stage. But yeah, that's something that they need to think about kind of really pushing. So for this week's Dynamite, it's an important one, and they need to carry on the momentum. They need to be building a lot of storylines to fill 2 big shows within 2 weeks of each other. Again, it's the same situation. It's like this, between like give or take in a month, we'll have had All In, All Out, Arthur Ashe, and Wrestle Dream. That's a lot of stuff that you're building towards, and then you've got Full Gear that you're promoting, obviously in LA as well in early November, isn't it?
So at the Forum as well, which I've been to, and it's a prestigious venue, but it's pretty small. Like I'm actually quite small for a pay-per-view. You know, you're talking like 7,000 max, I think. In there,
Staples
which
Center
usually
is the other one, isn't it? That's where the Lakers play.
it's almost like
now.
an acceptance of defeat, isn't it? In a little way, like for them. I know 7,000 is still really good, but like, you know, it's not the normal.
It isn't, and it is like we see it with the TV ratings, like we talk about the year on year, and these are things that you still need to be worried about for them. So I think really, what do I want from them? I suppose my fear is that Collision becomes another show where you're throwing shit up against a wall and seeing what sticks, rather than having a plan of action of what are we building to over these big shows. What do we need to do? Where we go? They should be thinking about where they are for winter is coming at this stage in December, which wouldn't surprise me if that turns out to be a bloody pay-per-view the way that they're going. Like that's the kind of situation that they're in. Is they need to have good stuff on here. And I think the issue here is that, like, we looked at Collision and it's like some of the stuff we liked, some of it was very throwaway. And you know, they're not.
It wasn't cancel your plans on Saturday night level, was it?
Like, they're not in a position to be able to do that either. And throwing out vignettes of random people, it's like, okay, really? Like, I don't know if that's the solution for them, is more characters.
Did you see the vignette of, and I'm high on this one, Mike Sonada? That's a different man. Mike Santana, who's also a different man who ate the original Santana. Yeah, it was a weird story this week. They had like they showed, because obviously we've heard rumblings on it, and I've made the comparison that one listener gets, that they are basically Quavo and Offset of Migos, where like if you're a fan, you knew they weren't getting on when they stopped liking each other's Instagram posts and then unfollowed each other on Instagram, and then you kind of notice, there's not much interaction going on between these two until you find out there is a full-blown beef there. Same thing with these two. Like over that period towards the end of the Jericho Appreciation Society, like it was like, I've noticed like Ortiz and Santana, they did an interview with Steph and they were both in different locations and they couldn't have given a different answers to a lot of the questions. They just look like two men who don't get on. And then it was the same thing. I noticed, they're not liking each other Instagram posts. They never tag each other in anything. That's weird. And then you find out that it was probably the case that maybe Ortiz was a bit fat and comfortable in the JIS, and San, there's Liam in the chat, he gets me references, and Santana maybe wants a little bit more. Obviously the Santana injury kind of derailed any split we might have got, or even, I think there was talk of potentially Santana even leaving the company around that time. He's back, but yeah, AEW had this promo where I think they aired it on Rampage, didn't they? I saw it first on Twitter, where like it's talking about, no one's got his back and he can only rely on himself, showing photos of him and Ortiz from All In, where again they did not make any eye contact, where even doing double team moves, they even even look at each other. Like there's clearly something there, and I just assumed it was an angle. But reports are coming out that Nick Hausman's saying, and there's other people reporting it, that it's not an angle. They really do they just hate each other, and they were cutting promos on each other on Twitter this week, and apparently it's a shoot. And we're not getting the Santana and Ortiz program that we get, JP. It's a very sad bit of business, really. But I say it not to just poke fun at that, but Will brought it up in like our little Brit Res group chat. Like, there's a bigger issue here. Like, this is unprofessional. If it's a storyline, I accept, like. And again, my first instinct was a storyline. I'm just going with the reporting here. I'm not going to do the Grapple Gareth, everything's a work. I'll go with the reporting and accept that it's a shoot. If it's a shoot, Will's point was they should both be fucking fired, because in the wake of CM Punk, you just shouldn't put up with this shit on your roster. Yeah. And when it's Santana and Ortiz, you can probably afford to sack them. So I kind of get his point. But for me, it's a bigger failing than the company. If this is legit, and it's a big if, Dynamite might happen and they might end up doing an angle. But if it's legit, like, these two had an obvious issue with each other, like, that was clearly causing problems backstage. And after a year, if you're Tony Khan, if you're AEW, you just bring them back and put them in angles together, and then put them in a match together, and do no mediation. Like, never actually make them sit down in a room and hash out their fucking differences. Like, my HR in my work would have me and fucking, Bob or whoever from the office, like, we'd get in a room and it'd be like, even if you aren't ever going to talk again, like, you need to be able to work together, folks, type of thing. Like, my manager would do that. I've seen that happen. Like, that doesn't happen in this company. It's just, anyway, let's go on TV. There's going to be no problem with this. Yeah, you two can do angles together. Yeah, you two can just appear on screen and not make any eye contact. That's fine. Like, have we learned anything from Punk? Like, anything?
Nope.
And I'll cut this out, by the way, again, if it turns out to be a work. But, like, it seems to be a shoot.
I just got the idea of this promo getting to TV, and you see some of the stuff he used, like he'd said on here, he goes, "No crutch, no crew, straight dolo, exactly how I like it," to quote him verbatim.
No crutch.
According to Neil Flanagan, our man Neil's brilliant write-up on Post Wrestling. But if that's not the case, I'm with you. It's just like, this is the kind of shit that they need to be hashing out. I go, no, people, if you're here, you need to be willing to work with each other. That has to be the first rule. No more of this. I don't want to work with it. That it's bad. It's just bad for business. And if you're trying to establish Mike Santana as a single star, then surely
I want him to be one. By the way, I fucking love the look of him in this new gimmick. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that clearly he's been building to for a while, and it's very clear that obviously now he's got the kind of the size you'd expect of a kind of singles guy. And he did do those like kind of shots by himself, didn't he? Was that in GCW or something? Did he do a match there? He did like something, didn't he?
He was doing all the cool indies. He was doing like Beyond and stuff like that as like a singles guy, and that was another sign that things weren't rosy. You know, they weren't taking indie bookings together.
Exactly, and I think like at this stage, you can't have that kind of stuff in your locker room. Like, particularly if you've gone through the CM Punk stuff, you can't. And if they're not willing to work together, then you've got to say, because it just, again, it makes you look weak. That's the issue with this. It's not the issue with two people not getting along in the workplace. Like, that can happen, but it's like they have to be able to work. You have to be able to mediate the situations. You can't hope that someone goes away and in their own head they sort out the problem for you, because that's what it is. You need to be able to ask, look, are you going to be able to work together? Like, because, you know, I think of Andy Cole and Teddy Sheringham at Man United, who fucking hated each other. But they could work, you know, they won a European Cup for Man United.
Won some trophies, you know. That's sports, isn't it? Like, again, I mentioned that Punk documentary earlier. I'd never seen it. Kenny Omega, when he did the sessions with Renee, like, I'd seen quotes from it. I'd never actually seen the full video of him. Like, Kenny is remarkably laid back about the whole Punk thing. Like, people should watch that. Like, and he literally's talking about, like, if anybody has ever been on a sports team, or even at, like, I know it's America and Canada, but like, you know, at college level or whatever like that, or in the UK, when you was in the fucking school footy team, people didn't get on. Fights happened, you know, disagreements happened. But at the end of the day, like, you know, the people organizing it would either put the pieces back together or work to mediate to make it all work. Like, how many football teams, like you say, like Sheringham, like Andy Cole, all of that. Like, there's been loads of those issues, like, over time. And you make it work, don't you? You don't let it affect the overall product or, you know, the outcome of the game, I suppose, in actual footy. But it's madness. It's madness that, like, yeah, we clearly learned nothing from all this. But yeah, that's AEW for you. I just think what we've learned from this conversation, JP, is all of AEW's ills aren't gone just because Punk's gone.
No, and that was a point I tried to stress last week. Is that, like, the problems with that company do not begin and end. It's not like everything is awesome now. They're gone. And yet we're back to the old way of things before the evil man turned up and ruined everything. It's like, no, there were problems there beforehand, and there were problems that just weren't being resolved. And we can see these things. And the reasons, again, why we say these things is not just to be negative on AEW. It's in order, effectively, to say these are the things you should be thinking about as you're going along. Because if you do them and you resolve them, you'll have a better company and a better product as a result of this.
I think we've lost JP there.
Oh, sorry, have I gone? Have I gone?
He's gone.
Oh dear.
Let me know if I'm still live, folks, in the chat. Anyone want to talk about CM Punk? Oh, there he is. Back.
Hello. I can hear you throughout that.
Oh,
I am here. I don't know what quite happened.
Oh, maybe it's me. I'll cut that off the video version. But anyway, we're done.
No, leave it in there, mate.
Rosy as ever.
Yes.
Going forward. By the way, just side note, completely unrelated to what I'm talking about. Apparently, Wrestle Talk have parted ways with Adam Blampier. Couldn't happen to a worse cunt. It was me that was had the internet problems there. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. Apparently I was live. There we go.
StreamYard being weird. Sorry, folks. But we're back anyway. Also, fuck that cunt. Anything more on AW before we move on, JP?
No, that's pretty much it. We'll have more to talk about in the weekend show. Dynamite, if you want to go there, patreon.com/grapple.
Do you want our full Dynamite takes less than 48 hours after now you can get them on the Grapple Weekend show on Fridays. It even gets a little title now. You know, we got through quite a few subjects. If you want JP's, we're about to talk a little bit of Impact. We got JP's Impact TV report over there as well. There's plenty going on each week. But on that note, yeah, we should talk kind of strangely the big show of the week. Like they're the two biggest news stories of the week, JP. The big show of the week, Impact Victory Road. Saying that wasn't even their biggest show. They had the Impact 1000 on Saturday as well.
And they had Emergence about 2 weeks before, which was bigger than this, I'm sure of it.
What they do. And they got a UK tour coming up, which is probably going to be pretty big. I think the taping stuff while they're over here. But yeah, like I say, we do cover Impact week to week on the weekend show, whether we watch the show or not. So we're usually abreast of the ongoing stories and everything going on and the particular news headlines. There was a great news headline that come out of this one. Mike Tenay and Don West being inducted into the Impact Hall of Fame. Love to hear that. I think that's obviously very well deserved for both. I think maybe they were planning on putting Tenay in and decided to add Don West to it as well. Maybe that's kind of the way it worked. Or Don West, you know, they suppose they could have done Don West on his own, but absolutely the right call.
Oh, absolutely the right call. They are a massive.
I'll just try and fix this.
And I think the great thing about this was, in terms of, and it for me was the highlight of the you're back with the video now. Hopefully, all the technical gremlins are getting out of the way. I can see you. I'll be gone for 1 second. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if you manage to come. But yeah, I think this is a great shout. They are like there was a big TNA chant that came up as well when they had done the video, and it was a great video package of like a lot of the great moments of them as a commentary duo who. I think the nice thing about them is you could tell that they got on and that they were really good. And like I say, really good. I suppose even at the time we were slightly critical. I was never mad about Tenay as such an overtly kind of like expressive figure because I was used to him as being the professor on Nitro. But there he is back, crystal clear in 720p, not 1080p because StreamYard want more money.
Probably more 360, I think, at this stage. But close
I'm a 240 man myself. But yeah, I think with this, it was long deserved. It was like a really good shout. They are incredibly important. When the TV was going to shit, I don't know how bad it would have been if they weren't there, because they were the only people. And then they replaced Tenay with what do you call him? Josh Matthews. For a long time.
Remember that? It didn't work. Men's fashion expert Josh Matthews. Remember him?
He just wasn't anywhere close to it. And they'd replaced Don West with Taz at a point when really the problem was they signed Taz because they could. And he was a really good commentator on SmackDown. But frankly, they should have just left Don West there, because what Don West did is and I know we spoke about this when he passed away, is he fucking tried and he worked. If you watch like those early TNA pay-per-views to where he was on Impact, he was somebody who was he had a brilliant voice for commentary and loved it, and he got on well and got on well with Tenay, and that really shone through in the commentary. And I thought it was a lovely touch at the end of it where they went to Tom Hannifan and Matthew Raywalt, who I think are an excellent commentary pair. And in fact, just thinking of all the people we speak about, the New Japan situation with Kevin Kelly possibly leaving, in terms of Collision, and it really should be Riccaboni rather than Kevin
we didn't
Kelly.
mention the commentary, did we? It was shit.
Yeah.
When Nigel McGuinness is holding things together, it's not good.
Yeah. And there's that part of me thinks the perfect person is Hannifan, because he knows his stuff. He works hard, but he has that voice and knows how to kind of do generally a lot better commentary than I think people will ever give him kind of credit for. But they were kind of moved by it as well at the same time. And I was like, that was like a really nice touch. I was thinking to myself, if New Japan wanted to get someone in who is slick and is a good commentator, they could do a lot worse do a lot worse than Tom Hannifin. I think he
does
could
his
do
research in a Riccaboni, right? Similar to Riccaboni. Like I know we've maybe criticized a little bit for being overly Riccaboners, but like I do love Riccaboni because he's just I always say he's a boots and trunks announcer. He's professionally does the job well.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, there's times when he's a little bit unprofessional, a bit goofy, but overall, like he just does the job well, and he's not 10 out of 10. He's like a really solid, consistent 7 out of 10 nice presence. And if you hear that FWA review, you know how much I rate that as a commentator. I don't want to hear people, be loud and boisterous, and bad commentary is like the worst thing in the world for me. So I will take adequate, don't really notice it, a lot of commentary. And that sounds like a slight, but it's not. I think Tom Hannifin kind of fits into that, where it's like, it's just a nice, easy listen. He fills me in with the facts that I need to know, and he does a professional job. Like professional announcer doing professional announcing. Like, I actually want that out of my commentators. That's the one.
There's not too much color with them as a commentary team, and they make stuff that generally is pretty average sound better than what it is, which probably isn't higher praise for a commentary team. And that's really what you could say about Victory Road, as much as anything, is it was an Impact Plus special event on there. And it's one of the things where I kind of looking at them as a company and thinking of like kind of where they are. It's unfortunate because you can't always help but feel like they could do a lot of stuff good, but are they able? Then they're only ever going to have a limited amount of resources. They're only ever going to be able to perform at kind of like a level. The fact they've got 1,000 episodes of Impact is kind of incredible, because the amount of times this company has been on its death's door. Like, there are years, the Destination American years, and the going into Billy Corgan and Global Force and that whole shit show before they end up with Anthem, where you're thinking they're going to be dead. And then how they're still surviving today. But if you look to the crowds here, it wasn't a big crowd. I'm guessing only like kind of 400 or 500, because there was a point where they did a wide shot and the cameras pulled back and there was like a lot of empty seats. And you could tell the entire top row was kind of darkened out. And that's part of the thing for them, is they do some stuff right. It's just that like they're only ever at a certain level. And it's hard to see them getting above them. What they are is like is a place where, as if you want a stepping stone in your career to AEW or a bigger stage in Japan with New Japan or WWE, they are a place to go to where you won't tarnish your reputation. Generally, you won't come out like that used to be the case with TNA and with Impact, that you would be in the position where you would come out looking worse. I don't think people do anymore. And I think, you look at but for this show, I think the issue with it is it was like, it was all right. It was kind of there. It was fine, really, for the most part. But it was like a professional wrestling event going on with professional wrestlers in it that lasted 3 odd hours. That's pretty much as it's the big show of the week. And in any other week, we probably wouldn't end up talking about it other than kind of 5 minutes. But it's interesting to get an idea of where Impact are at this stage in the day. I don't know if you heard that or not. There he is. Oh, he might be diving off on there. I mean, to go to a couple of comments that we have on here, we have Impact is 2 promotions. They're a place for those on the rise or on the fall, but they do have a core of some of the best in the world. I think that's like a very good point here from Ewan.
I mean, women best in the world, I don't know, but some very, very, very talented wrestlers. But I don't say any of that as a slight, because I agree. Like, what you were saying was all true, but I don't think that's a negative. I like that Impact operates that place in the world. They're actually strangely a place where, Bully Ray and Devon have just signed WWE. What do they call the Hall of Fame deals? The Legends deals. Like, they've signed that, and they're probably going to be fine working Impact going forward. To the point, we made jokes about Trinity earlier, but Saraya seems to be trying to shoot some sort of angle with her on Twitter. Could she end up in AEW doing something with her? It wouldn't shock me. She'd probably come along. That's probably a Mercedes thing. Probably comes along with that package. Maybe Saraya works her first and then works there. That'd be fine too. They're in this weird neutral place where the other positive is no one really sees them as a threat. So they get a lot of talent too, when it comes to the New Japan guys, obviously being in partnership with them as well. I'm never disappointed when I watch the shows. I think we always say it every time we get round to it. You know, oh yeah, enjoyable pay-per-view, enjoyable pay-per-view, and we hold it to a lesser standard than than, for example, in AEW. We'll very much get into the weeds when it comes to the week to week. But I would agree with it. I would say this show was a bit of a mixed bag. There really isn't anything. Usually there's something I'd be shouting from the rooftops about from this show. I maybe expected it to be a couple of the matches here that maybe I'm not feeling that way on. Obviously I don't want to colour your thoughts. Please rave if you need to rave. But for me, there wasn't really anything that went above 3.5 stars on this. And there were a couple of matches that were outright bad. It was fine, like you say. It was an okay show with not a huge amount newsworthy, I would say, coming out of it, outside of the Mike Tenay Don West stuff, outside of the fact that, like, I was very shocked Deonna Purrazzo lost so straightforward until I found out that her Impact deal is up. So Jordan Grace coming back and getting that big win, I think, is there's more to that than was on the screen there. But even that, I don't think it kind of hit my expectations. I just thought, yeah, it was all right. I'm going to get into the meat and potatoes of it, JP. Was there anything you were massively into on the show? And please, obviously, say if there was.
I think that I would probably go 3.75 on the main event. I actually like the work for Josh Alexander and Steve Maclin. I just wish they were in front of the crowd. I think that's possibly where, like, I kind of felt with it. Like, the crowd were, like, sort of just weren't as into it, whether they were tired. It wasn't that big a crowd anyway. It felt like it should have been on a bigger show than this. But I liked it as a match. I thought
maybe it was the crowd, maybe it was the crowd that pulled me out of it. Because I've seen people go really high on it. You in the chat, I know he's high on it too.
I thought there was some really, like, I mean, I thought it was good back and forth stuff. It wasn't like kind of just overtly like Josh Alexander having to play kind of babyface and peril for it as well. Maclin had got himself into that bit better shape. Like, he really went like kind of hell for leather there as well at the same time. It feels like this is the beginning of a feud. And in many ways, it feels like Alex Shelley's had his run with the title. He'll have the match with Trey Miguel, like, kind of very soon. And then after that, we'll get to Josh Alexander getting the title back and then having him and Maclin properly for the title, because I think there is stuff that they could do there, just hopefully in front of like a better crowd, because I just thought it was like they kind of went in there like kind of stiff and beat the shit out of each other as well. I mean, I liked it. The problem was like you say, the crowd were the thing I felt like were kind of like an issue in. Perhaps it was a bit too long. As much as anything, because the version I saw was like 3.5 hours long, including all the countdown to victory.
Oh, I enjoyed that. Have you visited the merch stand? The loudest fan, the Jeremy Borash, the loudest, most rowdy fans are the ones that are going to get on TV. I watched all of that. I saw all of that.
It's always fascinating. You can always hear the production cues now for like Impact. It feels like that's the other thing as well, as we accept like that lesser level of production, which is a thing that apparently that they're wanting to remedy. It's just, do they have the actual investment in it? Because that requires time, money, and resources to be able to do it. And are those things that they have? I just wish that this match also had some sort of title on it or some sort of stakes. Like, although I'm not averse to the idea that two people who are pushed commodities having like the main event on the show, it said a lot that you had Trinity versus Alicia Edwards as the semi-main.
Terrible. That was one of the bad ones. But before we get there, I do want to say on the main, Ewan saying here, like Andrew at Voice of the Wrestling at 4.75. I think before I watched it, I think I saw that review, and maybe that was the expectation going into. And yeah, I think it was the crowd. I think it was the fact. I think you nailed that. It didn't really feel like it mattered, because I was kind of like, oh, this isn't for the title, and now it's over, and that's the end of the show. It was just a bit like, oh, okay. It just, hard hitting. There were good exchanges in there, but again, didn't feel like there was much of an atmosphere on it for me. And yeah, I'm not sure if the drama was necessarily there for me as well in the closing stretch. But I'm not saying it was bad. 3.5 to maybe you could drag me up to 3.75. You and say he wouldn't go. Couldn't see it being under 4. Fair enough. Two very talented wrestlers. I think Steve Maclin's been an eye-opener one for me, from me not being able to pick him out of a lineup to where we are today. That is that is progress, and I'm a big Josh Alexander guy, but it just maybe didn't grab me as much as it clearly has others. But would I watch more from them? Absolutely. I wouldn't watch more Trinity and Alicia Edwards. I think Alicia Edwards sucks. I really didn't enjoy that. Maybe that took me out of the show, and the nonsense with Frankie Kazarian and Eddie Edwards and all that getting involved. A lot of nonsense in that one, JP.
Yeah, no, the bullshit.
Didn't have much positive to say about that one. I did have positive to say about again. I thought it was more definitive than I expected, but. We're big fans of Jordan Grace and Deonna Purrazzo on this, and I think it was maybe the low end of my expectations with them. I'd go 3.5 on it, and maybe it did feel a little bit like there was just a real punctuation on the finish that maybe I wasn't expecting. Maybe that's smart booking. If Deonna's on the way out, Jordan should go over strong. I'd like to talk about this match before we go. Where's Deonna heading next? But I did think they did good work here. If it didn't maybe hit the level I was hoping for out of the two of them.
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think it was necessarily. It didn't, because it kind of just appears in the middle of the card, and it didn't feel like one. It felt like they were more interested in PCO Bully Ray than they were this match, which is kind of a weird role reversal of what it was before, where Jordan Grace was basically going away to do bodybuilding, and I think she lost to Deonna Purrazzo, kind of like on the way out.
We reviewed that, didn't we? Yeah.
They've done the role reversal there, and they've both been very important figures for the women's division as well. And I think going to Jordan Grace versus Trinity would be a smart move them, if they're going to get round to it. I think that's something you could headline a pay-per-view with, and Jordan Grace has shown that she can deliver in those big matches. Are you able to get a good match out of Trinity? Because when I watched, like I say, the Trinity Alicia Age, it was just so much like, and now I'm going to do this move, and it's going to be unnecessarily kind of complex with somebody who isn't. And I was thinking, like, Alicia Edwards really has no business being in that kind of spot whatsoever. There are so many other people that they could kind of go with, and it's just for the Eddie Edwards storyline. Really, it's the kind of like it's just like a kind of very lazy title defense necessary to go with. But yeah, Jordan Grace, Deonna Purrazzo, I'd go 3.5. Like I suppose I expected more. It's not that it's bad. It's just that we've seen these two have better matches.
Got great chemistry.
Prominent position in the cards. They have got great chemistry, and you mentioned where next with Deonna Purrazzo. I think
anywhere she should want to be.
Yeah,
like, absolutely. Like I'm not saying she's the best wrestler in the world, but like in US women's wrestling, like she has to be top 20%, top 10%. Like, yeah. Both of these, Jordan too, obviously.
Yeah, I think, and I'd say WWE. I think there'd be more like actual potential if she went there, and I think she'd be able to kind of fit into the system, Deonna Purrazzo, and work well within it. I wouldn't say AEW because she'd get lost in the shuffle. Like,
that's a shame, though. We should be able to say that. We should say that. That should be like they should take advantage of her. Absolutely. And again, I don't want to turn into that podcast where it's like it's like when you cover like the smaller Japanese companies. It's like all we can talk about is when do you reckon they'll get to New Japan? Like, you don't want to do that, but at the same time, like, just looking at it from a business point of view, if I was AEW, I would, pillage these guys.
One thing that Deonna Purrazzo has done is there was like a kind of an angle with Julia. So it made me think that we'll get that match at some stage beforehand. But then the nature of Impact is she'd be able to work that regardless or not of whether or not she's with them. But I know that's something that's something that would definitely do. I mean, if she wanted to do that, it's just that if WWE are going to hire wrestlers, and like you'd either have to be on the male side really spectacular and like a big star, I think, with no grief or baggage coming along. Whereas I think if you're a woman wrestler, I think there's a lot more opportunity. It's whether or not they've got people earmarked in developmental for who they want to bring up. Would Deonna Purrazzo be able to kind of leap over several of them to get into the queue? If she gets in, is she going to be pushed any higher than, say, Zoe Stark is? Like, just to throw a name out there. I'm not necessarily sure. But at the same time, she should be wanted by the major companies in the world. You would think that they would want to have her at this stage. And she's done a lot for Impact. And I think Impact's done a lot for her. like it's allowed her to kind of grow and develop as a performer, because she's still very young. I think she's less than 30 at this stage, and you kind of look at her and think you should be doing better things at this on a bigger stage. And it feels like something like WWE would be like, she's kind of proved that she can improve herself outside of that system, and that used to always be one of the kind of things that they looked at for hiring people. But are they hiring people? And also, are they going to be in a, the way WWE is at the moment? They've got the people they want from developmental going to be brought up, and they feel like they've got those people in the system already. And do they want to bring anyone in from the outside? But in AEW, and I think we both agree on this, just can't see her being anything else but being completely lost in the shuffle. Within a couple of weeks, she's tagging with Taya Valkyrie against Sky Blue and someone else.
That's true of anyone. It's probably true of Mercedes as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, Impact. Back to Impact itself. I mean, did you have other highlights and lowlights from this from the show? What else stuck out for you? What are other big talking points for you from the show?
I mean, in terms of the big talking points, I don't really think the tag title match was, as you said.
Again, like, what is it? Why do I work myself into a shoot every time? Like, and be like, oh, it's Motor City Machine Guns, and they're gonna be working against the Rascals, so that's gonna be fucking awesome. And I think, excellent veterans, Motor City Machine Guns. I was screwed that up. Alex Shelley is a singles top guy. I enjoyed that little run he had. I very much like him. Just never grab me these matches. Like the names written down on paper are better than the reality. Like, with these matches, and they're not bad either. I go 3.25 on it. That's not saying it's a 1-star match. It's just saying it was a match, and I wanted to be excited about it.
That's how I felt. Exactly, just a match. It didn't need the bollocks. Didn't need the stuff with the title belts. Didn't need the good hands. Didn't need any of that stuff. And that's what we got instead. And as a result, it was like, oh, okay. Whereas this could have just been like go out and have a cracking tag match. And one of the Rascals work heel throughout it, but instead it was just like a kind of the definition of 3.5 if you're feeling generous, but I'd be like 3.25. I was just like, oh, okay, it's that kind of a match, and like my interest kind of went at that point. And I thought I said it on the weekend show. I thought, well, this is just building to Trey Miguel like going for having a match against Alex Shelley. And you just thought to myself, Trey Miguel is one of these people. They do like to reward loyalties. We saw with someone like Crazy Steve now getting a push at this stage.
Serious Steve now.
Serious Steve, yeah. Just like another Joker replacement they like to throw in there into the mix. But
I'm just looking at like the Multi Machine Guns output this year, and just looking at cage matches. There have been strong matches. Shouldn't be totally unfair. The Gresham and Bailey match from January, I remember as us being into that. Outside of that, Ace Austin and Chris Bay from the February show. I don't really necessarily remember that. Oh, the Morgan Webster and Andrews match from May, that got a lot of talk at the time. That was from an Impact TV, wasn't it? So there is that. Maybe we're parachuting into the wrong places. You've got to give credit where it's due. So there have been glimmers of it.
There have been. It's just that time has gone, if we're going to be honest now at this stage, and they've probably got as much mileage out of them and as they can have. And Shelley's your world champion. I don't know. Maybe I feel the same way though. MJF being a Ring of Honor champion. I'm not.
Oh, I like that. I wish it had gone longer. I wish they'd stuck with that story, done more with it.
Yeah, but again, like they haven't, sadly, for it as well. But it was a tag match on it, and I think that's the kind of issue when you go through like the rest of this. I mean, I thought the Anything Goes match was just bollocks.
Shit. It was
just shit match, shit finish as well, and
took
the stuff
over the show.
It just did. It took over the show with him getting hit by a car in the pre-show, through to him having petrol poured on him, and then Bully Ray like just absolute bollocks. And it's just like you think if he's not going to be there because of this Legends deal, which I don't see that being the case. It's like, did he put over anyone? No. PCO, he needed it, didn't he? Like, fuck's sakes, just ridiculous. Out overtly looking like Herman Munster as well. It was just like bloody awful. Like he's dressing up as like a 1950s version of Frankenstein. Yeah, terrible. Like I
go star on that, if that.
Yeah.
A star and a half, maybe. Professional wrestlers, aren't they, as Gareth said?
Star on that. I don't know what Tommy Dreamer defeating Kenny King to win the digital media champion. I mean,
I thought Dreamer's promo was good. I really did. When he cut that promo, when he was like, "It's going to end one way or the other this tonight, lads. It's either going to be a case of, I got one more chance and I blew it and I'm gone, or I got one more chance and I'm gonna have." I think the way he put it was like, something for me. I'm gonna have like, Matty would make fun of me for it, but I thought Tommy Dreamer was actually very good at selling this match. The match itself was all right. It wasn't the worst thing on the show. I know that's damn with
Kenny King did a hell of a job trying to carry him along, and yeah. They Dreamer was dressed up as Terry Funk, so he was always going to get that kind of like.
And it's still Dreamer in 2023. I'm not fully endorsing it. I'm just, the promo was good. It was like, sorry,
it's the digital media championship. Who gives a shit, really?
Yeah,
like, you can get away with this kind of.
Plus, it's Kenny King. Who really cares? Like, I'm not Kenny King. It's
I weirdly always have a kind of soft spot for it, but yeah, that was the kind of Crazy Steve beat Black Taurus on there as well. So I mean, it felt like
that was very WWE drama. That was very like talking to the camera style stuff, which I didn't. Maybe I'm not invested enough in the TV to understand this Crazy Steve melodrama that's going on. But if it grabs
when he had a series of Mankind style interviews with Tom Hannifan, and they kept on like they were relating to in the package on there. But then I thought to myself, then at these points, I was like, "Where's Mike Bailey? I thought you had Gresham under contract. Why isn't Ace Austin and Chris Bay on the show? Why isn't Moose in a prominent position as someone who's always been featured very heavily?"
But that's the problem when you're Impact. If these guys have got other bookings and other stuff going on, you can't always guarantee they're going to be there.
They were on the pre-show in terms of Austin and Bay and
were they?
Brian Myers. They were.
Oh, there's no excuse there then. Yeah, fair enough.
Leo Rush versus Kushida. I just couldn't give a shit about Kushida. It's just where I am. Like I couldn't. There's many more interesting people. That Leo Rush versus Mike Bailey would at least have something to it. But it's just like I don't know who cares about them at this stage. So I mean, I think that's where kind of Impact are, is they're still trying to make the best with what they have, which isn't very much.
Definitely. Yeah, that's it really. Not much else to say on it, and of course we'll check in the next pay-per-view, which will be probably in about 10 days. There's Impact 1000 as well.
There is.
Week, so I'm sure we'll give that a
might try and watch it before the weekend show.
Yeah, there you go. There's a promise for you. I was going to say, anything else you've been watching? I've been sent while we've been recording, JP. I've been sent a few of the links to the amazing visuals of Kawada backstage at AEW. It is with Tony Khan for video viewers. Image will be in the show notes. Here he is backstage in front of a truck, not looking particularly happy, and here he is devouring a Chicago deep dish pizza, looking the least infused I've ever seen a man. In front of a pizza.
Get me back to my ramen store is what he's thinking. That first one, he's not impressed. He's just like, what the fuck is this? What am I being expected to eat? Yeah. Those definitely have to be there. But it's a nice
cake in it. It's deep dish pizza,
you're talking about a legend of All Japan. I suppose the final thing I'd like to be mentioning is I finally got round to watching an All Japan match to talk about. Finally got round seeing one of Yuma Aoyagi's Triple Crown matches, and it was one against Satoshi Kojima, which is quite good. I can't really go berserk over it. I loved the N1 victory final last week between Go Shiozaki and Keno. I thought that was an absolute crack, like 4.5 on it.
Yeah, you were raving about that. Well, there's a ceiling on Kojima in 2023, sure.
There is. And you know what? Yuma Aoyagi did as well as what anyone was going to do. It was much better than, say, his match. I think he like anything he'd had in Noah, Kojima here. Like Yuma Aoyagi is very, very good. And he's got the character with him as well. And he did some good bits where he was like mimicking Kojima's offense and the chops to the corner, stopping Kojima from doing his chant, kind of doing what Kento does, Kento Miyahara, where he starts to like kind of play at like kind of playing a kind of like almost comedy heel to an extent, but then people kind of like him and he gets over, but showing like a kind of general lack of respect. There was 1,500 there, but it was quite a big venue they were in, so it looked, and the way it was shot, it didn't look great because it looked like there were loads of empty seats. But as a match, I thought this was like, it's as good as you're going to get against someone like, I go 3.5 stars, and it's as good as you're going to get against someone like Satoshi Kojima. And in All Japan in 2023, when they are in the position that they are, you kind of have to take what you get. And anything like this just helps establish Yuma Aoyagi, who they've stuck with, and they've given him some wins. I'd expect him to start losing that title soon, but he's certainly someone you think, oh, okay, you've got he's younger than Kento. You want to have like that be a kind of a few, the former tag team partners as well. But yeah, he did as good a job as he could do, carrying someone in his early 50s through to a decent enough match. And he's had that match with like Yuji Nagata as well. It's just that who else is he going to be able to wrestle? I think interestingly, Hiromu Takahashi was on the card, which tells you about the sort of state of affairs that they're in terms
not
of
a threat.
Like, yeah, very much like Impact, like not a threat, which feels like absolute heresy comparing All Japan to Impact. But in 2023, it's kind of where they are. They don't pose a threat to anyone else, and they're quite happy to use the odd star here and there from another promotion. And they, you know, I just hope that the Yuma Aoyagi run kind of catches on. It's just, for me, if you could be in there against some better younger workers, that might be a road to go down. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah, like I say, 3.5 stars.
Perfect. It's always weird, isn't it, when you watch like a show like that where, I don't know, it's like the Impact show, you know, like the empty spots in the crowd stuff. Even that, you know what? Even watching All In, like I watched, like in that documentary, there was a little bit of there was footage of the Punk Joe match, and like my eye just gets drawn to, but there's empty seats on top, and my brain's like, no, there's 80,000 people there. Stop getting your eye drawn to the empty seats in the background. This isn't Progress running, 170,000, down, and 100 people in a Birmingham venue. You know, this is I'll be careful. This is we're looking at 80,000. You know what I mean? It's like visual, isn't it? Though you don't want to see those empty seats. You know, it just kind of pulls
but
you.
We've seen it when we've watched Champions Carnival, where it'd be in front of 200 people, and it looks a bit depressing. I mean, I think for the thing for them is if they're able to run like a full, you have that 1,500 in Kurikan, it's great and it sounds fucking great. And it's just about knowing what size venues that they could run. And I think that's with All Japan, it's a much kind of bigger job. But I think there's something, at least I get the impression that from Noah and New Japan, it's in everyone's interest to have All Japan about. It doesn't help anyone to have them gone. They're like because they're a massive part, obviously, of Japanese wrestling history, from the breakup of the JWA going into New Japan and All Japan, you know. Bubba's company, but we are a long way away from selling out Budokan for like several years in a row without it, you know, like for all of their big shows. Like, we're not at that point in time. But what they do have is some talented wrestlers.
Yeah. Well, if you want to talk Saad, the Budokan, and talented wrestlers, JP, I can't think of a better way to end this show than a final Kawada photo that's been sent to me. Kawada with Jeff Jarrett backstage at Dynamite.
Some
couple of legends there. Oh, but if you're not watching the video version, you're missing out. YouTube.com/@grapple if you want to watch the video version.
No way Jeff would put him over either.
The day after, or patreon.com/grapple if you want to join us live and send us such gems. But on that note, you and Ashley are going to review CMLL. I'm guessing, not JP. I think
if I can be sent
your lot as first stuff you watch this week.
Yeah, that's it.
The Kurt Angle documentary, I kind of you mentioned wanting to see that. I do want to see that at some point. As far as stuff that came out this week, but it's definitely been a slow week for like first run stuff. That's worth a watch.
I think I saw the beginning of the Angle documentary, because it's Peacock. It looked good. It looked like it had a kind of good professional sheen to it. And I only saw the early stuff talking about his dad and like the death of his dad. And it was like interviewing all of the brothers and stuff like that. And it's a bit more kind of like ground down. I mean, that's as much as I got round to seeing. I'd be interested to see whether or not it goes into into like the Impact TNA run. Like they're always the things for me. It's like how much they go into. Was that go into Kurt's off the rails until he rejoins WWE? And just becomes part of that narrative, because that would be my fear if that's the case. Where if it's a proper documentary, it might have something a bit more substantial to it, as my voice is going.
Definitely. Well, there you go. But probably, as the chat's saying there, got a busy few weeks coming up. Wrestle Dream coming up, Grand Slam coming up, all kinds. I think they're going to be back in Saudi at some point. We've got lots to chat over the coming weeks. But yeah, nice laid back one this week, JP. Anything we need to plug? Throw out there. Matty was on Shite this week with Andy Ogden. I'll throw that plug in for him. Always a cracking listen.
Always a cracking listen.
So yeah, I look forward to hearing that.
Brilliant. I've loved listening to Shite so far, so I'm looking forward to listening to that one. Other than stuff from us, we've got out the flashback on FWA Ring of Honor, Frontiers of Honor as part of my week one choice for Dealer's Choice. We had Matty's obviously in the pre-show, which we're going to be probably recording maybe around this weekend, which is going to be the story of Deadly Game Survivor Series 98, which I need to listen to that theme tune. I think
madness that doesn't immediately. It's like someone says dental plan. I think Lisa needs braces. Like, yeah, yes. I hear Deadly Game. That song goes off in my head. Like it's going to be the outro, by the way, for this for audio listeners. It's 100% coming. That it's set now.
We'll be doing that one, and then next week, if we're on the pre-show, you're going to be doing your announcement for what your pick is, which is we spoke about in the pre-show before, is completely left field. I don't have a clue which direction you're going to go in.
Me neither. That's the issue. I'll come up with something though. But yeah, and obviously at Time, which was a cult favorite with Liam. We've got a couple of references today.
Yes,
it's going to be the next episode, that first week of October. I think you guys are aiming for. So you've got that to look forward to on the public YouTube feed as well. But like I said earlier, if you're not one who wants to subscribe to the Patreon, we do appreciate supporting in any way it comes. And yeah, a subscribe on YouTube, I like anything like that. Always helps us out. So consider. I'm not turning into one of those guys, hit that button, but if you can, we appreciate it. But yeah, on that note, that's it for us for another week. We'll be back for, like I say, weekend show on Friday, Dealer's Choice for the weekend for Matty, and plenty more where that came from. But folks, go forth, have a great week, and we will catch you again on next week's Spotlight. See you all.
Bye.
Good night all.